The annual examination begins. In the dimly lit student dorms, Zhang Xiaoho paced back and forth, fidgeting with his sleeves. "Brother Fan, we need to get going. It's the annual examination. If we're late, it'll look bad," he urged. Mo Fan sat cross-legged on the floor, his brow furrowed in concentration as faint glimmers of light flickered around his hand. "You go ahead. I'll stay and practice control a little longer." Zhang Xiaoho raised an eyebrow. "Making a last-minute effort, huh?" Mo Fan didn't reply, his focus unwavering. After a shrug, Zhang Xiaoho left with the others, leaving Mo Fan to his quiet determination. The exam grounds. By the time Mo Fan arrived at the training grounds, the place was already abuzz with activity. Rows of students stood in neat blocks, their excited murmurs filling the air. This wasn't a written test like the ones from Magic Theory. While theoretical exams were part of their curriculum, they held little weight compared to the annual practical examination. This was where a student's true progress was assessed and their fate decided. At the center of the training grounds stood the focal point of the exam, the star appraisal stone. Suspended on a stone pillar, the black, watermelon-sized orb seemed to pulse faintly with an otherworldly energy. It was a simple yet crucial device. When a student placed their hand on it, the stone would emit light, its brightness indicating the strength of their stardust, the foundation of all magic. The stakes couldn't be higher. For many, the examination was a make-or-break moment. A strong performance could mean advancing to better classes, while failure might mean expulsion. The homeroom teacher's pep talk. Students, Xue Musheng, their passionate homeroom teacher, bellowed as he stepped forward. His face glowed with enthusiasm. "Remember what I've told you. The brilliance of your stardust represents the effort you've put in this year. Today, you'll show the world your progress. Release the light of your stardust and prove your worth." The students buzzed with anticipation, though some looked visibly nervous. "Mr. Xue, I might get expelled," whimpered a frail girl named Zhuahiyu, her eyes brimming with tears. "Nonsense," Xue Mushing said, his tone firm but kind. "You've worked hard all year. Don't doubt yourself now. But no matter how much I cultivate, my stardust feels so weak," Zhuahiyu murmured, her voice trembling. Before Xue Mushing could respond, Lu Jianhua, the dorm head, clapped her on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Hiyu. Even if you don't make the cut, I'll still be here to support you. With a mage in the family, we'll be fine." A student nearby snickered. "Ha! You're acting like you've already passed. Who knows? You might be the one packing your bags." Lu Jianhua smirked, puffing out his chest. "Just wait. When this daddy places his hand on that stone, its radiance will blind you all." The playful banter was cut short as 3 examiners arrived, their stern expressions silencing the students. These disciplinary teachers were known for their strictness, and their presence only heightened the tension. "Quiet," Xue Mushing barked. "The annual examination is being overseen by school supervisors this year. Do your best to display the essence of a mage. The ceremony begins." The examination began with the usual speeches. The principal droned on about the importance of hard work and perseverance, while the students stood in stiff attention. Next came the school supervisors, one of whom was Mu He, a prominent figure in the city. Mu He stepped onto the platform with a confident stride. "Today is a special day," he began, his voice booming. "Not only are you showcasing your year's progress, but we also have a distinguished guest among us. She is the pride of Bo City, a genius who was recruited by the Empire Magic Institute at just 15 years old. You've all heard of her, Mu Ningxue." The mention of her name caused an immediate uproar among the students. "Mu Ningxue? She's here?" I heard when she awakened her ice element. The grounds froze solid. Rumor has it she mastered the ice scatter spell in just 8 months. I've been here a whole year and can barely control 5 stars. She's not just talented, she's stunning. A beauty and a genius. It's unfair. As the murmurs grew louder, Zhang Xiaoho grabbed Mo Fan's sleeve. "Brother Fan, it's her. The little princess is here," he exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement. The ice fairy. Mo Fan followed his friend's gaze to the platform. There she was, Mu Ningxue. She stood like a snow lotus, serene and untouchable. Her long, silver hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of moonlight, and her white, form-fitting dress accentuated her graceful figure. She radiated a cold, ethereal beauty, as if she'd stepped out of a winter fairy tale. The crowd fell silent as her presence commanded their attention. Even the teachers seemed momentarily awestruck. Mo Fan's chest tightened as he stared at her. This was the first time he'd seen Mu Ningxue in 3 years. The cheerful, approachable girl he once knew was gone, replaced by someone distant and aloof. She had grown into a goddess, both in beauty and stature, but that unapproachable aura left a bitter taste in his mouth. Memories of the past. Back then, she was just the little princess, a girl who played with the neighborhood kids in the mansion garden. She laughed easily, wore pretty dresses, and had a warmth that drew people to her. But the years had changed everything. The iron fences went up, separating her from the others. Her talent as a mage skyrocketed, and her status rose with it. She became a star, while Mo Fan remained in the shadows. "Brother Fan," Zhang Xiaohou whispered, snapping him out of his thoughts. "You should have eloped with her back then. Now she's way out of reach." Mo Fan shot him a glare. "Did you hit your head on the toilet?" "I wasn't thinking," Zhang Xiaohou muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Mo Fan didn't respond. His gaze returned to Mu Ningxue, his emotions a tangled mess of admiration, bitterness, and resolve. A silent resolve. As the examination continued, Mo Fan's mind was elsewhere. He clenched his fists. The image of Mu Ningxue's cold, distant expression burned into his memory. "No," he thought. "I'll prove myself. One day, I'll stand on the same stage as her, not as someone from her past, but as someone who's her equal." With that thought, Mo Fan stepped forward, ready to face the star appraisal stone. The time for hesitation was over. Today, he would begin his journey to rise above it all. Mu Ningxue's short speech. Mu Ningxue's speech was brief, leaving the crowd in awe and admiration. For Mo Fan, however, the excitement buzzing among the students seemed a little ridiculous. They spoke as if getting into the Empire Magic Institution was an easy feat, as if they could all suddenly become prodigies like her. The Empire Magic Institution was renowned as the best magic university in the country. For a small city like Bo City, even one student making it there was an extraordinary achievement. The fact that Mu Ningxue was accepted into the institution without even attending Magic High School only highlighted how special and talented she truly was. "Brother Fan, you've got 2 years to make it to Empire. Once you're there, even the Mu family's influence won't be able to touch you." And then, Zhang Xiaohou grinned mischievously, winking. "Hee hee. Who knows what might happen?" A barking dog. Before Mo Fan could respond, a sharp voice interrupted. "Don't make me laugh. After today, your brother Fan will be expelled from school, let alone getting into Empire," sneered Zhao Kunsen as he stepped forward with a smug expression. Zhang Xiaohou's face darkened. He'd tolerated Zhao Kunsen for far too long. "What's your problem, Zhao Kunsen? When has my brother Fan ever offended you? Do you need to bark like a rabid dog every time we talk?" Zhao Kunsen sneered, his arms crossed. "He didn't offend me. I just can't stand his shamelessness. Back then, he dared to befriend Miss Mu Ningxue. Does he even realize what kind of lowly trash he is? His family caused mine so much trouble, and now I'm supposed to keep quiet about it? If it weren't for him, my family wouldn't have lost the land we used to make a living." Zhao Kunsen's voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Mo Fan remained silent, but his fists tightened at his sides. A bitter history. The truth behind Zhao Kunsen's words stung. The Zhao family, like many others in this area, depended on the Mu family's whims for their livelihoods. They were gardeners, servants, and laborers, modern-day serfs orbiting the manor's wealth and power. The Mu Manor wasn't just a home. It was an empire within the city, a remnant of an older era where nobles ruled and commoners served. Zhao Kunsen had always blamed Mo Fan for what happened years ago. Back then, Mo Fan's recklessness had offended Mu Zhuiyun, the patriarch of the Mu family. In his fury, the old master had taken punitive measures that impacted several families, including the Zhao family. While the details of the incident were murky, the repercussions were still felt today. "Mo fan, are you really so stupid?" Zhao Kunsen continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "You should have realized long ago that some people are untouchable. But no, you had to act like a fool and provoke the Mu family. Did you think this was some fairy tale where a servant's son marries a princess? Look at the mess you caused for everyone." The king on the platform. Zhao Kunsen gestured toward the platform where a commanding figure stood at the center. Mu Zhuiyun, the patriarch of the Mu family, was a man of imposing presence. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd like a hawk, his aura exuding authority. Though he appeared calm, everyone knew that one word from him could decide their family's fate. "That's the man you angered, Mo fan," Zhao Kunsen spat. "Mu Zhuiyun could have destroyed your entire family, but he was benevolent enough to let you stay here. You should be groveling in gratitude." A heated exchange. "Zhao Kunsen, shut your mouth." Zhang Xiaoho snapped, his patience finally snapping. "What? Did I say anything untrue?" Zhao Kunsen shot back. "Face it, your brother Fan is just a delusional idiot who brought shame on himself and his family." Mo Fan raised his gaze, his expression calm, but his eyes cold. "Zhao Kunsen, you talk a lot for someone who acts like a dog." Zhao Kunsen's face twisted in anger. "A dog? Sure, I'll admit it, but I'm a posh dog. I live comfortably, eat well, and wear nice clothes. Meanwhile, you're the stray dog digging through trash, stinking up the streets. You don't even realize how pathetic you are." The crowd murmured at the escalating tension, some shifting uncomfortably while others watched with morbid curiosity. "And your father, Mo Jiaxing, does he regret having a son like you?" Zhao Kunsen sneered. "All that effort he put into getting you into magic high school. And for what? You'll just be kicked out today like the useless trash you are. A battle of wills." Mo Fan's gaze swept the crowd, his eyes landing on another familiar face, Mu Bai. The young man stood at the edge of the gathering, a faint smirk playing on his lips. It was clear he was enjoying the spectacle. This wasn't surprising. Mu Bai had always resented Mo Fan. As children, they clashed often, their fights mostly harmless. But now, with the stakes higher than ever, Mu Bai was reveling in his newfound superiority. Mo Fan exhaled slowly, suppressing the anger bubbling inside him. "Zhao Kunsen, you've got the perfect mindset to be a servant. You understand your place, bow your head, and wag your tail. That's something I'll never be able to do." Zhao Kunsen's face turned red. "And what has your defiance gotten you?" "Nothing. You're just a loser clinging to empty pride." Mo Fan's lips curled into a faint smile. "Better to stand tall and fail than to crawl on my belly like you." The tension crackled in the air as the two glared at each other. Around them, students whispered, unsure of how this confrontation would end. A quiet resolve. Mo Fan glanced back toward the platform where Mu Zhuiyun and Mu Ningxue stood, their figures exuding power and elegance. His father's sacrifices, Zhao Kunsen's taunts, and Mu Bai's smirk all swirled in his mind, fueling a quiet, burning resolve. "You think I'm beaten?" he thought, clenching his fists. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." Inner monologue. In his heart, Mo Fan vowed silently. "I've learned enough about this world to know one thing. It's not fair. The rich and powerful make the rules, and people like us are just pawns. But I won't stay a pawn forever. I'll rise above this, no matter how long it takes. When I stand at the top, I'll show all of you, Zhao Kunsen Mu Bai, Mu Zhuiyun, that the toad you look down on can devour the swan. And I won't just devour it. I'll soar higher than you ever imagined." With that, Mo Fan turned away, ready to face the challenges ahead. Let them talk, let them mock. He had no time for their games. His path was set, and nothing would deter him from walking it.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
All right, stop being so loud. The examination begins now. If there is any more noise coming from any of you, then you'll lose your qualifications to take it. Just thinking about the expression on Lady Mu Ningxue's face at seeing you being expelled in front of all of the students and teachers, I reckon she would definitely regret wanting to run away with you in the past selfishly. Mubai didn't feel a need to conceal his objectives anymore as he whispered these sinister words into Mo Fan's ear. Your mouth smells like crap. I can't handle this stink. Don't get close to me. Mo Fan used his hand to block him. The corner of Mubai's mouth twitched. I'll let this kid be arrogant for a while more yet. In the past, Mo Fan had held Mubai on the ground as he fiercely beat him up in front of Mu Ningxue. Since then, and for the rest of his life, Mubai would be unable to raise his head in front of Mu Ningxue. Even now, he still felt ashamed. Today, Mubai, planned on letting Mo Fan suffer even worse, being expelled in front of the entire school and Mu Ningxue. In this society, where magic was the ultimate authority, was reason enough for Mo Fan to be ridiculed and looked down upon by Mu Ningxue. When he returned to his father, Mo Jiaxing, how was he going to explain this to his father, who sold their house just so he could enter Magic High? When he returned, unqualified students being expelled during the annual examination was a very common matter. Being expelled wasn't something announced to the entire school. The school wasn't likely to be that unkind. However, there was one exception where the school would directly announce the expulsion. That would be when the magician Stardust hadn't shown any progress at all. Under normal circumstances, after the students had awakened their Stardust, they would properly cultivate it every day. Even the more clumsy people would slowly make their Stardust glow and develop their magic capabilities unless the student was too lazy to do so. In order to punish this type of student, who wasted the awakening resources and magic books, and to help make the other school students understand that cultivation was not a child's game where you could waste your time, the school would publicly announce the expulsion of a student whose cultivation was far too low. This kind of public announcement might not happen every year, and it was set up to encourage the students who took the back door to enter the school. During the start of this school semester, the entire class conducted a rough examination. At that time, Mo Fan's cultivation was practically at zero. Shui Mushing almost made a public slandering of Mo Fan in a fit of fury. Now, the school semester had ended, while also entering the most important annual examination. If things went according to the calculations, then Mo Fan's cultivation would be very likely approach the line of public expulsion. Naturally, to prevent a miscalculation, Mu Bai and his uncle, Mu He, had also prepared a big present for Mo Fan. This big present was enough to put Mo Fan out of bounds, giving him the honor of receiving the punishment the school hadn't given for 3 years. The most fortunate thing was that Mu Ningxue and Mu Zhuiyun would also be present to view this scene. Mu Bai felt much happier just thinking about it. Today was the day to show himself off, and from that day on, soar through the sky with high status. It was also the day for that cheap Mo Fan to be humiliated. How great, underscore. The annual examination will now officially begin. All of the 30 classes in the school began simultaneously. The process of the test was actually very simple. You just had to place your hand on the star appraisal stone while everyone, including the examiners, watched. Then you concentrated to enter a meditative state, and at that time, the star appraisal stone would emit the same radiance as the examinee's stardust. They would then assess the level of the cultivation based on the radiance. Every student had 3 attempts. The final result was based on the attempt with the brightest radiance. Naturally, the more the student concentrated on it, the more the star appraisal stone would accurately display the radiance of the student's stardust. The order of the examinees was random. The first examinee naturally happened to be that weeping beauty, classmate Hiyu, who was already standing at the front. The girl was still that timid. She was still extremely shy as she walked to the front of the star appraisal stone under everyone's gaze. She looked as though she was scared of being expelled. You may begin, the bald examiner said. Good luck, Hiyu. Your teacher and your fellow classmates believe in you, Shui Mushing said. Don't worry if you don't do well. I will take care of you, the nut job of a dorm head, Jianhua said. Hiyu was feeling shy as she closed her eyes. She then placed her small hands on the massive star appraisal stone. The entire class suddenly turned silent. Their eyes were attentively watching the girl who was taking the first test, and it seemed as though they were more nervous than the examinee. For some reason, Mo Fan felt a change in Hiyu's temperament after she began her test. Her expression turned serious. Although she was nervous, she wasn't frenetic. The Black Star Appraisal Stone gradually emitted some radiance from within. In the beginning, it looked like the early sunrise. Following Hiyu's intense focus, the radiance gradually spread around the Star Appraisal Stone, causing the radiance to fill the surroundings. In this moment, the three examinees practically announced the results simultaneously. "Classmate, it's done. Your final result is an A," the bald examiner said without an expression on his face. Hiyu opened her eyes. She looked as though she was unable to believe it, before she excitedly said, Really? I got an A." Although the scene of a girl happily yelling out, "She got an A" was strange, they had no choice to admit that Hiyu's final results gave everyone a surprise. "I freaking hell. Hey, that's the standard for entering the elite class. I'm speechless." Before the test, she was sitting there wailing endlessly. We really thought she was drifting on the borderline of being expelled. But as the final results came out, she freaking got an A. Magic B** TCH. What a typical magic studying B** TCH. I'll never believe her again. After the results came out, Mo Fan's dorm head, classmate Jianhua, was completely flabbergasted. Underscore razor my ass. It'd be really good if he would be able to get AB. He's just blindly worrying about someone who got an A underscore. The homeroom teacher, Shui Muxing's expression was stiff. He was deceived by the female teacher who acted all cute. However, having the first one to take the test and get an A made Shui Muxing feel happy overall. All the grades will be summed up, and after that, the 30 classes will compare the average grades. Shui Muxing felt like his own class had the potential to reach the top 3. The biggest competition was the class next door, Class 7. With that lightning element kid, Su Xiaoding, who knew how much of a difference there would be between the classes. However, what he wished for was the most outstanding student in his class, Mu Bai, to not be inferior to Su Xiaoding in any respect. "Next one. Do you want to partake the test?" the bald examiner said, as he looked at Hiyu. Hiyu shook her head in haste as she said, "I've only grasped 6 stars so far, so I'll let it be." "All right. We'll use the evaluation from your other teachers to decide which class you'll be placed in," the bald examiner said. "Thank you, teacher." Hiyu walked out happily. Originally, she wanted to share this joy with the friends next to her. However, she realized the friends were all a meter away from her. She was puzzled by this. She didn't do anything wrong. Her grades were pretty good, right? Next, Zhang Xiaoho. The examiner announced the name. Zhang Xiaoho couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't think it would be his turn so soon. "Brother Fan, I'm going," Zhang Xiaoho said to Mo Fan. "MHM, do your best and stay calm," Mo Fan replied. "You shouldn't be advising other people. Hearing it makes me want to puke." Without fail, Zhao Kunsen followed, saying this. Mo Fan was puzzled. Underscore, is this Zhao Kunsen on a stalker mode and conversation denial mode? How is it possible that he would just pour cold water along with everything I do? Underscore. Zhang Xiaoho glanced at Su Muxing and then took one glance at the practical teacher, Tang Yue. "Do your best, teacher believes in you." The one who said this was the practical teacher, Tang Yue. Zhang Xiaoho nodded as he walked to the side of the Star Appraisal Stone. Closing his eyes, Zhang Xiaoho adjusted his breathing and slowly entered a meditative state. The radiance emitted from the Star Appraisal Stone flickered. It followed Zhang Xiaoho's breath as it brightened and dimmed. It was easy to tell that Zhang Xiaoho was slightly nervous, which explained why the Star Appraisal Stone was unable to grasp the energy from his stardust. However, Zhang Xiaoho slowly entered the meditative state. At last, the radiance stabilized. The cyan-colored radiance from the wind element covered the surroundings of the Star Appraisal Stone, and the radiance was superior to Hiyu's. Other than being a bit unstable, there was no other fuss about it. A+. The 3 examiners seemed to have different views regarding it. "Teacher, let me try one more time." Zhang Xiaoho didn't seem pleased with this result. Thus, he once more entered a meditative state. This time, he was considerably calmer. The intense radiance covered the Star Appraisal Stone's surroundings. It was apparent that it was much stronger than Hiyu's. Additionally, There didn't appear to be any unstable flickering from it anymore. The three examiners glanced at each other and nodded. A plus, A plus, A plus. Final results, A plus. After they announced the results, the students of his class all showed shock and envy. Crap, A plus. That's a grade that secures your place in the elite class. This kid, Zhang Xiaoho's lifestyle, is just mediocre, so who would have thought that his cultivation would be so amazing? We were mistaken. We really were mistaken. That's really amazing. If I could get A plus, then my dad would immediately gift me a car. Xue Mushing and Tang Yue, the two teachers, gave a slight smile as they nodded their heads. Their eyes were filled with praise. Zhang Xiaoho had always been an outstanding student to them. Thus, having this kind of result was well within reason. Classmate, you're done. We will assess accordingly. The bald examiner was about to announce the final result. Teacher, I'd like to attempt the next test. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoho's expression was firm, but his face showed a shyness as he said this. Are you sure? The examiner asked, a bit surprised. I know that the higher you place in the rankings during the annual examination, then the longer you will get to use the Stardust magic tool. Thus, I'd like to take the activation test, Zhang Xiaoho said with certainty. Xue Mushing and Tang Yue maintained the smiles on their faces. They already knew that Zhang Xiaoho had reached the level of activation. The examination consisted of two parts. The first part was the Stardust test. The majority of the students only needed to complete this part to continue to study magic at Magic High, while the second part was set up for the top students. Out of over 1,000 students, there were roughly only 100 or so who had touched upon the level of activation. If one can activate the elemental skill during the examination, then naturally they would be awarded more points for the annual examination. To obtain more of the limited resources from the school, the students would have to display all of their powers during the annual examination without hiding anything. Zhang Xiaoho's activation test didn't go particularly smoothly. He was so nervous that he was unable to properly link the 7 wind element stars with each other to form a star path. However, the examiners were able to see that this student was capable of activation, but due to being nervous on the testing grounds, he was unable to activate successfully. However, they still gave him some points based on his performance. Feeling somewhat disappointed, Zhang Xiaoho walked out of the testing ground with his head low. Mrs. Tang Yue was like a tender older sister when she patted Zhang Xiaoho's shoulder. Don't feel discouraged. You will definitely be able to enter the elite class with your grades. Teacher, I thought I was proficient in control, but who would have thought that a little nervousness would cause the time I spent practicing control to disappear mysteriously, making me start from the beginning. Teacher, how are you able to accomplish the magic activation so easily? Zhang Xiaoho asked. Naturally, it's from practicing. Other than that, the state of your heart is also crucial. Not only does a qualified magician need to have a solid foundation, but they also need to have a mentality that won't waver if they encounter trouble. Zhang Xiaoho nodded as he seemed to understand this. Next, Huang Feifeng. B. Teacher, I should receive an A. I should be given an A. If you make more noise, we'll cancel your results. Next, Luo C. C. The student called Luo C jumped for joy. For a failure of a student like him, receiving C was like New Year's. The students of 8 class were receiving their examinations, one by one. The majority of the students were B and C. There didn't seem to be many A's. Look, the people of the school council are almost here. They are at the 7th class exam grounds. The one taking the test is that lightning element guy, Su Zhaoding. That is firmly the #1 guy in the entire school. That's not certain. I heard Mu Bai's cultivation is also very high. As Mo Fan heard his classmates' discussion, his gaze turned toward the 7th class exam grounds. Sure enough, the school council group included the particularly outstanding Mu Ningxue, who had already walked to the vicinity. Old brother Mu Zhuiyun, this is our school's most outstanding lightning element student. His name is Su Zhaoding. When he awakened his lightning element a year ago, I, as the principal, began to pay close attention to him. He's currently doing the activation test. Care to watch? The principal of Tianlan Magic High said to Mu Zhuiyun. The principal was very polite toward Mu Zhuiyun. Thus, it was obvious that Mu Zhuiyun's status within Bo City was very high. Ning Xue, why don't you take a look at this student's performance? MHM, Mu Ningxue nodded. Lightning element, the first of the elements. Its violent, destructive force was enough to make other magicians take several steps back. Within the examination grounds, Su Xiaoding, who wore the school uniform, was already there. He adjusted his breathing, as well as trying to make peace with the pressuring gazes coming from the students and teachers of the entire school. Ever since he had entered the school, he had become the focal point for them. These gazes were incessantly urging him to cultivate. Heed my command! The first of the elements, lightning. Strike of lightning. As the sounds faded, he raised a hand. The purple lightning arc surged. It was as though the Serpent King called out to the violent python soldier. They slithered their shocking body, twirling through the atmosphere and burning everything they touched. Activate! The electric arc violently descended upon the human-shaped puppet. The puppet violently trembled. It was charred from the drop of the violent lightning strike. The electricity crackled around, covering it with whip prints. The human-shaped puppet exploded with no remains in a single moment by the force of the lightning. On the floor of the training grounds, there were strips of black marks. It looked extremely terrifying. The puppet had already turned into a pile of black dust. The heaven-defying lightning element skill immediately stole the attention of the entire exam grounds, causing the elite students who were also able to activate skills to take a deep breath. Holy cow, who cares about wind trail? Who cares about water barrier? What fire burst? They're all weak. The tyrannical power of the lightning strike was not something the other elements could compare themselves to. It directly caused the puppet to explode into dregs. This destructive power, whoever was standing there would die instantly. After Su Xiaoding saw this result, his face revealed satisfaction. As he turned around, he, who was waiting for the examiners to deliver his results, suddenly noticed a pair of beautiful eyes that was like snow. It was Mu Ningxue. Su Xiaoding's face was filled with pleasant surprise. He didn't think his examination would catch Mu Ningxue's attention. She was definitely startled. After all, the power of lightning element wasn't something any other element could compare to. Ningxue, what do you think? The school supervisor, Mu He, asked with a smile across his face. Average. Mu Ningxue didn't take another look and chose to continue advancing forward. The principal and the other few people in the school council became stiff. No way, a lightning element this strong, and she still thought it was normal? Just how high were this girl's standards? That's actually not bad. Ningxue is an empire institution. All of the geniuses in the country gather there. The activation of the primary skill, lightning strike, is the most basic skill there. The reason as to why she thinks it's average is because she has a habit of using the standards of Empire Institution to assess. Mu Zhuiyun smiled as he explained this, giving the principal and the group of people in the school council a way out of this awkward situation. If you put it like that, does that mean Su Xiaoding has students with the potential to enter Empire Institute? The principal was also someone who understood how to deal with situations. He took advantage and asked this. The other people immediately copied what he said. If things go well, then Su Xiaoding's grades will be the best in the entire school, right? School director, Chen Guangliang said. That's hard to say. From what I know, Mu Bai from the 8th class is also quite capable. Vice principal replied. Hearing them saying this, a smile emerged on Mu He's face as he immediately spoke to Mu Zhuiyun and Mu Ningxue. Older brother, Mu Bai is a disciple from our Mu family. His grades have always been quite remarkable. From how I see it, it should be his turn soon. Should we go and watch? Mu Bai? Which families? He's Mu Yang's son. When Mu Yang passed away, I saw Mu Bai and his mother being bullied by others somewhere. Thus, I brought them to live in the manor. Mu Bai is a very intelligent and determined child. He's no worse than the other kids of our family. Oh, there's naturally a huge gap compared to Mu Ningxue, but he's still a seedling worth raising, Mu cautiously said to Mu Zhuiyun. The highest authority over the manor was completely within Mu Zhuiyun's hands. Mu counted as a lord as well. However, he was just a 3rd or 4th degree lord. That was simply not on par with Mu Zhuiyun. Oh, that slightly rings a bell. Then let's go and have a look. How about it, school directors? Mu Zhuiyun asked. The school director with the split hair that was gradually losing its color said, since it is a disciple of your Mu family, we are definitely interested. The group of people began to walk, slowly making their way to the exam grounds of the 8th class. The aura of this group of people was very strong. In the eyes of the students, the directors may be a faintly discernible existence. However, Mu Ningxue, a genius of the same age as them, was something incredible. On the grounds, the male students saw the girl observing from the side. Heavens, the group of directors is coming here. They really came. My hands are trembling. Good timing. Just in time for me to show off. Show off my ass. Your test is already over. You're just a dreg with a C. The students of the 8th class were unable to calm themselves. Every student's fate depended on the annual examination, while at the same time, the group of school directors who could change their future with just a single, praising glance were coming over. This caused the examination to have an exceedingly heavy atmosphere. Muhi was walking to the very front. The bald examiner immediately raised his head and glanced at Muhi. As Muhi hinted to him, the bald examiner immediately understood what he meant. He first pretended to not see anything before he indifferently said, "Next, Mu Bai." Mu Bai's eyes were still placed on Mu Ningxue's body. Even though the two lived in the same castle, it was still so big that Mu Bai has only been this close to Mu Ningxue just a few times before. "Mu Bai, it's your turn." Mui coughed to remind Mu Bai. Only then did Mu Bai come back to his senses. What could he do? He liked her for far too many years. Even if it were rather impossible for him to walk with her, he still wouldn't freaking let that trash, MO fan, take her away. He would be her bodyguard. It was time to prove the efforts of the past years. Mu Bai nodded before he began walking toward the exam grounds. He had been waiting for this for a long time. Mu Bai took a deep breath. To have the attention of the family and Mu Ningxue. These were things Mu Bai could only dream of, and today was the day where the both would come true. As he placed his hand on the star appraisal stone, Mu Bai repressed his excitement within his heart as much as possible. In this aspect, Mu Bai had actually practiced for a long time. Even if he felt more excited and nervous than anyone, he relied on his past training to complete a proper and stable meditation. A white and dense, icy wave quickly spread out from the star appraisal stone and covered the surroundings. This ice wave was so strong, it overflowed from the star appraisal stone and made even Mu Bai feel its cold on his face. All of the teachers and students watched this scene, entranced. The radiance was overflowing. This was perhaps the first time they have seen something like this happen during an exam. Even Zhou Min, who received an A, was quite inferior to the overflowing radiance of Mu Bai. S. The three examiners immediately announced their grades, and all of them were S's. I remember Su shouting from before had 2 S and an A, right? In that case, Mu Bai's Stardust is more superior than Su shouting. Mu immediately said. At this moment, Xue Mushing was astonished by this sight. This Mu Bai had hidden his true power? As expected of the disciple of a noble family. I thought Mu Bai would only get 1 S at most. Who would have thought that he would receive 3 S's? 3 S's. The final result is naturally S's. These are without a doubt the best grades in the school. Shit, Mu Bai is too amazing. He unexpectedly received 3 S's. These grades directly shake Su Zhaoding from Class 7 off. Thus, Mu Bai will be worthy of the title number 1. I never imagined. Mu Bai, you're far too amazing. A few girls at this moment had already become completely infatuated with him. Mu Bai was handsome, and his grades were outstanding. He was simply the knight on the white horse in their hearts. Big brother, what do you think? Mui laughed as he asked Mu Zhuiyun to his side. Not bad. Mu Zhuiyun gave a brief comment. Mu Ningxue, however, didn't say anything. Seeing Mu Ningxue not react, Mu Bai knew that getting 3 S's, in Mu Ningxue's opinion, was nothing impressive. This was the activation test. It was also the time for him to show off his true strength. Mu Bai turned around and walked to the middle of the exam grounds. Mu Bai is taking the activation test. No shit, Mubai has definitely grasped the control of 7 stars. I can't wait to see the skill of Ice Element. As they were discussing this, Mubai had already fixated his gaze onto the human-shaped puppet. That's right, the Stardust test was only the basics. The people who had a brain were very clear on the fact that the activation test was the true assessment test. I will definitely have Family Head and Mu Ningxue take notice of me. He closed his eyes and began his magic incantations. Mubai skillfully made the 7 ice element stars connect with each other to form a star path. Ice spread. Without stopping or hesitation, Mubai yelled this in a rush, demonstrating all of his hard work. His pupils changed. After he finished his magic activation, those watching suddenly realized there was a layer of frost spreading on the body of the puppet. The ice quickly covered its body, and the puppet now looked as though it was painted in a layer of ice lacquer. It was rather astonishing. The stabbingly cold air pervaded the entire exam grounds. Creak. The ice spread didn't stop after it covered the entire puppet. It even began to spread onto the floor of the exam grounds. The other classes also had ice element students who had taken the activation exam. Clearly their ice spreads weren't as imposing as Mubai's. The other students felt intimidated and took a step back, feeling like the ice was about to spread to where they stood. The directors and examiners were calm. However, their eyes flashed with praise. This was the equivalent of a proficient ice element skill. It had reached the standard of a member of the Magic Association. This was actually set up for older students by the Magic Association. A student who only awakened a year ago capable of utilizing the ice element skill to a proficient level was something extremely rare to come across. Not bad. Mu Zhuiyun still gave the same evaluation. Mubai didn't know whether he had entered Mu Zhuiyun's eyes. With his heart feeling nervous, he shifted his gaze toward Mu Ningxue. As he looked at her, Mubai felt as though an arrow had pierced through his heart. It was because his most beloved Mu Ningxue hadn't taken a look at him from the start. Instead, her gaze had always been attentively watching a certain person in his class. Mubai took this opportunity and looked for the person she was looking at, and he felt another arrow piercing his heart. Mo Fan. She's looking at Mo Fan. Scoundrel, scoundrel. Why is she looking at him again? What is there to look at in a guy who is almost covered in trash? Why aren't you looking at my remarkable display of skill? Mubai's nervous face was almost completely distorted. On the most important event of his life, all he wished for was to get Mu Ningxue's attention. But in the end, she still ended up looking toward that little hooligan. That little hooligan was only a clown that existed to entertain the princess. What's there to see in a clown? When you're done laughing, move on. Why are you still wasting your precious attention on him? I will make you suffer immensely. Mubai's face was exceedingly gloomy. He carried a heavy resentment as he left the exam grounds. Your marks are extremely outstanding. Your Stardust is S, and your activation is of B grade. The examiner gave him his final results. Even the top students would only receive a C grade or a D grade on the activation test. The only other person who have received A, B was that lightning element user, Su Zhaoding. With a grade like this, he deserved the title of the #1 in school. Next, Mo Fan. As people were admiring Mu by magnificently seizing the crown, it was finally Mo Fan's turn. The truth is, Mo Fan felt like something was strange. Why did it have to be me after that green tea man? Did they scheme this? Mo Fan refused to believe that there was such a coincidental thing in this world. However, it didn't matter. If one needed sleep, one should sleep. Different situations call for different measures. If you don't do anything, then there'll be no clear sky. Are you all right? Mui whispered as he watched Mu by walking over. I did what you told me to. Mubai seemed like a scheming woman as he replied sinisterly. I'm doing this for the good of Mo Jiaxing. By directly sweeping his son out of here, I'll save him the trouble as a parent tirelessly worrying about him. His son wasn't someone who was suited to study magic from the beginning, yet he still had to force his way in, Muhi said. Muhi and Mubai naturally had ways to deal with Mo Fan. Before the examination, Muhi had used his powers as the school director to carefully scheme something. The bald examiner was one of Muhi's people. Thus, the order of the examinees was something Muhi had arranged. As soon as Mu Bai finished his exams, it became Mo Fan's turn. After Mo Fan finished his examination, it would be the time for resting and announcement of grades. Thus, within this short break, one could secretly pull a trick. For example, when Mu Bai had placed his hand on the star appraisal stone, he could slip in a black stone into it. The effects of the black stone were very simple. When the star appraisal stone was emitting its radiance, the black stone was capable of absorbing a part of the energy, causing the star appraisal stone's radiance to dim by a lot. So if Mo Fan was barely able to reach the C grade, then this tiny black stone the size of a grain could lower Mo Fan's grades to a solid D. Either way, he's just trash. Who cares if we make him look like complete and utter trash? There really was no need for the school to waste its resources on a person like that. Expelling him from the school benefited not only the school, but also his family. Mu Bai had already smiled so much that his face seemed completely distorted. How are you, Mo Fan, going to avoid losing all of your face this time? Mo Fan, that sounds familiar. At this time, Mu Zhuiyun slowly opened his mouth. Big brother, he is the son of Madame's driver. He reminded Mu Zhuiyun. At that moment, the Mu Zhuiyun whose eyes that seemed like ice and snow this entire time suddenly began to turn. In truth, he had already taken notice of Mo Fan. It's just he was in doubt. How come the second he got here, it was Mu Bai's and Mo Fan's examinations? Mu Zhuiyun took glance at Mu Ningxue to his side. Mu Ningxue quickly recovered her tranquil manner, acting as though she was looking at the mediocre students from before without any fluctuation to her emotions. Mu Zhuiyun's eyes gave rise to some satisfaction. A kid will always have a time where they are rebellious. Once they grow up, they will no longer be that childish. Let's watch then. He also counts as one of our Mu family, at least he was. Mu Zhuiyun's manner of speaking was indifferent as he said this. Mu Zhuiyun was also very clear on the fact that a driver's son was incapable of being any good. Thus, letting Mu Ningxue watch was also beneficial. This kind of person was common within the small Bo city. They would leave our world sooner or later. Mu Zhuiyun didn't want this kid, Mo Fan, to remain a scar within the heart of his precious daughter. On the other side, Mo Fan didn't listen to what these people were talking about. He had already walked to the front of the star appraisal stone, and just like the people before him, he placed his hand on the star appraisal stone. To be honest, I'm really thankful that he is here. He can save me from setting the standards lower. This way, I won't be too miserable, a failure of a student said. Third brother, I also got a D, don't worry. We can leave the campus together in a natural manner, said his classmate Xiao Bing, who was a water element from the same dorm. Whether he can receive a D is hard to say. Yeah, he probably didn't make any progress on his cultivation. In the same class, Zhou Min, who also possessed the fire element, was attentively watching Mo Fan. She wanted to know whether he studied or not. A person who clearly had a higher talent in the fire element than her being expelled from the school. This made even Zhou Min feel it was somewhat a pity. At the same time, she couldn't help but loathe Mo Fan, a person who didn't put effort into improving himself. There's light coming. The radiance seems really weak. It feels like it's even weaker than a D grade. On the star appraisal stone, the radiance felt extremely bashful. It was simply unable to escape from the inside of the star appraisal stone. However, the radiance on the inside had a relatively strong light. It seemed as if the light was being concealed by a shadow, simply unable to escape from the inside. Shit, something isn't right. That light, it doesn't seem to be a D. Really? Grade C? The dorm mate, Xiao Bing, looked at it in astonishment. He seemed unable to believe that Mo Fan was actually able to cause a C-grade fire element radiance to appear on the star appraisal stone. We said that we would leave the school in a natural manner, but you receiving grade C would barely meet the qualifications. What about the trust from one failure to another failure? Is it C? No, that's not right. The radiance is still slowly spreading. The examiners were also puzzled. The other examinees had quickly finished their tests. However, this student's radiance was weak in the beginning, but then it started to slowly become stronger. It went from D to C, and it was still growing stronger even after reaching grade C. B. This is definitely B. Holy cow, a comeback. The failure is doing a comeback. That must be a mistake. I only received a B. How could this guy possibly get a B? The other fire element user, Huang Feifeng, almost cried. Zhoumin received an A, and that puny little kid called Denyo also received a B out of the 4 fire elemental students. Only he, Huang Feifeng, had received a C. How was he going to receive Mrs. Tang Yue's affections now? Xue Muxing's eyes immediately began to brighten. As the homeroom teacher, his biggest fear was for someone in his class dragging down the average. Today, all Xue Muxing asked out of Mo Fan was for him to not be publicly expelled. It had not happened for the past 3 years. If this great Buddha didn't do that, then he could drag down the average as much as he wanted. What Xue Muxing never thought of was that this kid would suddenly emerge with a B. The average of the class was roughly B-. The great Buddha had unexpectedly increased the average grade. This something he could not even dream about. The current Xue Muxing was happier than seeing an A-grade student. The discussion volume this time wasn't any lower than the chatter about Mubai before. After all, Mubai was the person who everyone knew had good grades, whereas Mo Fan was the well-known dreg out of the dregs. The dregs suddenly seized a B. There were too many people who didn't expect this outcome. How is this possible? How is this possible? Mubai was flabbergasted. His uncle, Mu-He, watched this scene while feeling completely speechless. What kind of situation is this? That kid got a B? Mubai, did you really place the black stone there? The absorption rate of that black stone is really strong. A person who can receive a C would be turned into someone who can't even get D. Mu-He whispered to Mubai. I did place it. I definitely placed it there. Even if Mubai made a mistake on his examination, there's no way he would make a mistake on that part. The black stone was definitely placed there, but how did this guy get a B? Wasn't this guy drifting between C and D? Don't tell me that he was concealing his strength and then let it all out on the last examination to reach a B? C is passing grade, whereas B would be quite good. Who could imagine that a failure who was supposed to take the penalty that hadn't been given for 3 years would suddenly turn into a good student? This grade was well within expectations. Mu Zhuiyun's tone was indifferent as it carried a sense of mocking. His own daughter was almost taken away by this kid. If this really happened, then he would have been ridiculed by all of the people under the heavens. All right, let's move on to the next class. Mu Zhuiyun didn't want his daughter to pay too much attention to this kid. Thus, he said this to the crowd of people. Big brother, this Mubai, Mu-He wanted to continue talking. Mu-He was not satisfied with this outcome. Today's plan was to let Mubai show off his skills in front of the clan and receive the attention of the family head. The other one was to let Mo Fan suffer a tragic end. However, the 2 outcomes hadn't been attained. How could he just let them leave like that? Oh, distribute a bit more to their family during the new year to show encouragement, Mu Zhuiyun replied. As Mubai heard this, he was completely stunned. What the hell was distribute some more to them during New Year's? Who the hell wanted that charity-like money? What he wanted was attention. What he wanted was for the Mu family to focus on supporting him. What he wanted was the Stardust magic tool. What he wanted was the colossal cultivation resources which the Mu family distributed to their direct descendant. This big brother, I think, as Mu-He was about to say some few words for Mubai, another voice suddenly resounded. That's wrong. This radiance is wrong. Suddenly, someone objected. It was a woman's voice, sounding soft and sexy. Mrs. Tang Yue, what objections do you have regarding our decision? According to the norm, the results of the exams are decided by the examiners. Even if we wanted to object, Xue Muxing started saying. Xue Muxing was actually extremely satisfied with this grade. He even suspected the star appraisal stone to have some malfunction. How could Mo Fan otherwise receive a B? Mrs. Tang Yue, please let this matter go. If there really is a problem, then I reckon I, as the homeroom teacher, will unable preserve my integrity. Teachers have no qualifications to object to the assessment of the examiners. However, they can object to accidents happening during the examination. We can even examine the testing equipment to ensure the accuracy of the equipment, Mrs. Tang Yue said. At this time, a school director was secretly shaking his head toward Mrs. Tang Yue. At the same time, The principal was also incessantly hinting to Mrs. Tangyue. It's not that the school director didn't know there was some concealed trick beneath this, but they didn't want any unnecessary matter to arise when there were so many school directors present. What was the problem with the result? Wasn't it normal? It was a grade a common student should receive. Why do you have an objection regarding this result? Honorable teachers. Mu Zhuiyun became somewhat interested in this, so he began to inquire. Mrs. Tangyue had already walked onto the examination ground. Her eyebrows were knitted. Suddenly, she closed her eyes. She looked like a magician who was about to cast magic. The people who had some understanding about magic knew that she was actually just expanding her senses into the stone. Mrs. Tangyue's action immediately caused Mu Bai and Mu He to panic. According to the norm, after Mo Fan had finished his exams, the examinations would take a break so the students could rest. At the same time, they would announce the most outstanding student's name of the first half of the examinations. Taking advantage of the break, the bald examiner would remove the dark stone without suspicion. This way, everything would be normal. The plan was flawless. Everything was going smoothly, but who would have thought that there would be a teacher popping out from nowhere who discovered the source of the problem? Mrs. Tangyue, how can you just ignore the rules of the examination grounds? If I was you, then I would immediately leave the examinees' examination grounds. Muhi immediately yelled out. Muhi obviously had to be loud. He had to use his authority to intimidate this teacher who discovered the problem. However, Mrs. Tangyue wasn't afraid at all. She looked as if she found something as she directly walked toward the star appraisal stone. The star appraisal stone has a problem. This examination has to be redone. Mrs. Tangyue's incomparably sharp gaze stared at the examiner. The bald examiner was at loss on what to do. He hastily looked at Muhi. Muhi was embarrassed. His expression appeared to be confused. What are you shocked about? Go over there and take a look. We must give the examinees an impartial examination environment. If there's a problem, then we must immediately go and fix it, the principal said righteously. The three examiners immediately went over to inspect, and they also quickly discovered the hidden dark stone. That's weird. We've already inspected this before. How could something like this pop up from nowhere? Another examiner said in astonishment. Whenever a student's examination was over, they would inspect it again. When Mubai had finished, the person who had gone over to examine the stone was precisely the bald examiner. This time, the bald examiner was really scared. Covering up for someone framing others on the examination, that was a big crime. How is it? The principal asked the three examiners. Before the three examiners reported the emergence of the dark stone, Muhi said, "Oh, since there's a problem, why don't you let him do the test again? Director Wang, why don't you go to the storage room and grab another star appraisal stone? Although the star appraisal stone is useful, it's just a little fragile. After receiving interference of different energies, it'd start having problems. I'd really like to thank Mrs. Tangyue for finding out the problem with just a glance. You're really covering up for our mistakes." This Muhi was really an old fox. He immediately covered up the matter. Thus, the three examiners were simply unable to report the actual problem. Tang Yue's brow furrowed. She knew that this matter probably had something to do with Muhi. If she were to make this matter public, the school directors would be quite difficult to deal with. After thinking it over, it would also affect the students' examinations, so it was better if she just left it alone. All right, redo the test. Redo the test. Student Mo Fan, there were some small problems with the star appraisal stone. The grade from before is invalid. We will give you one more chance to redo the examination. The bald examiner held onto a straw of hope as he quickly said this. Mo Fan looked at these people as though he was looking at a group of clowns. You want to play? Keep on playing this, father. I am waiting. Great, go take the test again. At most, you'll receive a D. How could you receive a B? Third brother, we can once again leave the school in a natural manner, Lu Xiaobing said with excitement. Underscore the heavens didn't turn his back on I, Lu Xiaobing. I'm so thankful that Mrs. Tang Yue had discovered the problem. Just like I said, how could Mo Fan, a person who has even worse luck than me, have his luck turned over? Underscore. Mrs. Tang Yue, why did you even bother? Giving the student another chance isn't necessarily a good thing. Shwe Mushing didn't know whether to cry or laugh as he said this to Tangyue. So it really was the star appraisal stone malfunctioning. This made Shwe Mushing feel bad. What should be happening was really coming at last. The penalty that no one had received in 3 years was finally going to land on a student in his own class. Haha, how could I, Huang Feifeng, possibly be at the very bottom? Mrs. Tangyue, you are a hero. I really admire you, Huang Feifeng said, as if he was relieved of a burden. On the other side, Mu Bai's dog of a henchman was also extremely happy. Almost scared the hell out of me. I really thought this drag was making a comeback. Even I, Zhao Kunsen, have only gotten a B. Good, Mu Bai. This broken star appraisal stone almost secured the kid's entrance. I've come to realize that Mrs. Tangyue is increasingly more like the lover of my dreams. Zhao Kunsen wiped the cold sweat off himself as he continued. Oh, Mu Bai, why do you still have such a long face? Didn't they say that he only received a B due to the malfunction of the star appraisal stone? Don't worry, he will definitely get out of here. Could you shut up? You're annoying. Mu Bai snapped, as his mood was exceedingly bad. Zhao Kunsen withdrew. He didn't know how he had offended his master. The examination of the other classes had basically ended. Due to the examination of the 8th class having some problems, many of the people began to gather around them, including the top students of the other classes. At this time, Mo Fan accidentally became the focus point of everyone. All right, Mo Fan, you may redo your exam. Mrs. Tangyue, you've also inspected it. There shouldn't be any problems this time, right? The bald examiner asked with a flattering smile. No, there isn't, Mrs. Tangyue replied. Her dark eyes might have scorched his face for all the friendliness in them. Mo Fan once again stood in front of the star appraisal stone. This time he didn't feel a cold air coming off of it. It really was Mu Bai's fault. Mo Fan humphed coldly. Thankfully, the sexiest and most enchanting Mrs. Tangyue had discovered this so early, or else Mo Fan would appear to be lower than a piece of poop in front of the school directors. Mo Fan closed his eyes and placed his hands on top of the star appraisal stone. The cold star appraisal stone quickly turned warm from the circulation of Mo Fan's stardust energy. The radiance began to intensify, and the scarlet radiance looked as though it was burning from within. The radiance this time didn't suffer from any kind of suppression as it was released. It spread around the star appraisal stone, and it even began to leak out of it. This radiance... The first one to reveal an incredibly surprised face was precisely Mu Zhuiyun. The principal, vice principal, the disciplinary teachers, and the school directors also widened their eyes. The radiance is flowing out. The homeroom teacher, Shwe Mushing, was thoroughly flabbergasted. After being a teacher for so many years, how could he not see the meaning behind the overflowing radiance? In this entire school, only Mu Bai had achieved the state of overflowing radiance. It was not just because the flames were already relatively bright, but the overflowing of the fire radiance was even a bit stronger than Mu Bai's ice radiance. The surrounding students from other classes and the students from the 8th class were all trampled to near death by the word damn in their hearts. Overflowing radiance. This really is overflowing radiance. A student who was considered a weak-minded dreg had actually achieved the state of overflowing radiance. SS. It's S. It really seems to be S. How about we inspect it once more? Crazy. The bald-headed director Wang and the other 2 examiners had gone crazy. The classmates who thought that Mo Fan would get swept out of the school had also gone crazy. Shit. This is the real malfunctioning of the star appraisal stone. How could that guy's cultivation be at this kind of level? It's an illusion. It must be an illusion. I refuse to believe it. The water element student Xiaobing was wailing like a ghost. What happened to us leaving the school together? Let's forget about the fact that you didn't honor your title as a failure of a student, but you even became a divine student. This time there will be no one who will stop me in my way. Daddy, I will jump into the river. If Mo Fan can become a divine student, then I, a water elemental magician, probably can drown to death. The The normally expressionless Mu Ningxue was completely showing her emotions at this time. That's right, not even she imagined that the final result would be like this. For a person like Mo Fan that didn't have any particularly special talent or a family property, receiving a B was already quite normal. However, he achieved overflowing radiance, the overflowing radiance of the fire element. That was already one level ahead of Mu Bai, who had received resources from his family. For some reason, Mu Ningxue's heart bloomed with a sunshine that was like the overflowing radiance coming from the fire element. That really causes one to feel extremely shocked. I almost missed out on an even more remarkable student, a school director exclaimed in admiration after seeing this event. That's right. I don't dare to imagine what kind of disaster would be brought over if we were to only give him a B while also causing our school to lose out on such a prominent magician. Better late than never. Mrs. Tangyue, we are really grateful to your ability to spot details. As Mrs. Tangyue saw the school directors flattering her, she only returned a small smile. The truth was, even Tangyue herself was extremely surprised. All this time, she had been thinking that the most outstanding fire elemental student in her class was Zhoumin. But to everyone's surprise, this Mo Fan was even more remarkable. The most important thing was that he had always been calmly cultivating, not having the need to compete nor laying himself bare to others. This kind of temperament was very suitable for becoming a magician. The other fire elemental user, Goody Two-Shoes girl Zhou Min, looked at this overflowing radiance. Her small face was clearly showing her disbelief. This student who she always loathed for not making progress, he was actually stronger than Mu Bai? She had actually been making a mistake this entire time? All of their shock and disbelief was actually far inferior to the defeated look on Mu Bai's face. His expression couldn't even be described as an expression. It was practically a whole distortion. Even his cramping facial muscles were twitching. What was worse than being completely flipped over by the person they hated the most? The dog of a henchman, Zhao Kunsen rubbed his eyes over and over again. However, what he saw was still the overflowing radiance. The superiority he was displaying toward Mo Fan was completely obliterated, making him seem like a comical retard, looking all lofty in the middle of the people. S. Final result is S. The highest score in school was S. However, everyone was very clear on the fact that the magical capabilities within Mo Fan's Stardust were probably higher than Mu Bai by a bit. Mo Fan, do you wish to continue the exam? Naturally. Mo Fan gave the examiner a slight smile. Underscore this, Daddy. I have been waiting for this for a long time. Underscore man, if it wasn't for the world changing, then I would have already have reached this level during the high school examination. Fortunately, the outcome is still good. Underscore. Mo Fan naturally wanted to test his activation. Weren't most of the people bitterly cultivating just so they can appear as that little golden idol in front of others, glinting and shining? Fire burst. His entire aura was moving. After Mo Fan said his incantation, his whole bearing was very self-confident. A searing aura frantically spread from the central point of Mo Fan's body, washing over the cheeks of hundreds of people. The feel of the scorching heat was very distinct. The fire star path quickly mobilized around Mo Fan's body after he finished the arrangement of the stars. The obtrusive scarlet red and the staggering fire. The flames scuttled forth from the half-clenched hand of Mo Fan, just like a vicious and impatient animal. Go! As he waved his hand, the flames streaked across the exam grounds like a dazzling scarlet fire arrow. It accurately made its way into the human-shaped puppet's body. Underscore burn. He raised his hand up high. After a second of silence, the vicious fire suddenly blasted forth from inside the puppet's body. The more it burned, the more vicious it was. That raging fire engulfed the puppet in a matter of seconds. The reflection of the flames were visible on Mo Fan's face. His face was smiling, and his confidence was soaring. This was Fire Burst, the fire force he was in control of. There was no need to mention its charm. After finishing all of this, Mo Fan turned around. Every single person was dumbstruck. The teachers, students, directors, They hadn't even completely recovered their senses from the S grade he had gotten from his previous examination. However, then they saw Mo Fan's extremely smooth casting of Fire Burst. There was no hesitation, and neither was it forced. Additionally, the speed he had completed it at was even faster than Mu Bai. The fire element's primary spell was much more violent than the ice element's. That was why the reaction of the people was much more intense than Mu Bai's eyes spread after Mo Fan finished the casting of Fire Burst. Not only was it Mo Fan's beautiful turnaround, but it was also because of the boundless power of his fire element aura. Give your marks. Mo Fan glanced at the astonished examiners as he said this in a natural manner. A, B, A. The grades for the casting test were immediately announced. As expected, Mo Fan's grades were higher than Mu Bai's. Mu Bai was already so angry that he felt as though he was about to get a heart attack. If this continued, then he really would stop breathing. How could it be like this? This didn't conform with the script. Both of the scores were higher than Mu Bai's. Is this really the Mo Fan that we know? This really is the most amazing turnaround in history. He became a divine student in just a second. It's really blinding my dog eyes. Su Qinglin said. Xue Muxing's mouth had a crooked smile. He didn't care about the enmity between Mo Fan and Mu Bai. His class suddenly popped up a student with the S grade, and his grades for the activation test were the highest. If everything went well, then wouldn't he be number one in the entire school? Underscore from last place all the way to first place. I'm afraid there's nothing more shocking than this. It's like a dream, underscore. Underscore other than him being number one, Mu Bai should be able to settle steadily into second place, underscore. Thus, the first and second ranked students were in his class. This would give him a promotion, as expected of the Mu family. Brother Mu Zhuiyun, you really had our small-scale magician organization have an eye-opening experience. If I remember correctly, this Mo Fan is the son of the driver at your manor. Being in a large, noble family sure is great. You even unconsciously influenced a preeminent student in Bo City, said Deng Kai from the Hunters Union. Mu Zhuiyun looked at Deng Kai. Deng Kai was in the upper echelon of the Hunters Union, and at the same time, he was also a director of Tianlan Magic High. Amongst the school directors, his cultivation was the highest, and his strength was also the greatest. As a school director, Deng Kai was praising, and the other school directors were continually sighing. You can't help but admire that. A son of a driver is already this amazing. He's comparable to the magic seedlings which they have carefully raised. Mu Zhuiyun was slowly coming back to his senses from being shocked. He really didn't think that this Mo Fan would have some ability. Right now, he even heard praise coming from the people in his circle. His face immediately lit up. As his mood got better, Mu Zhuiyun's heart also began to ponder. Mu Ningxue had carried the flag for the family for many years. However, the other direct successors and branch disciples all required support from the family. Only this way were they able to consolidate power within the family. The Mu family were very short in magicians who specialized in the fire element. Although this kid had done things that had caused him to feel incomparably angry, he was just young and inexperienced. It had already been so many years since then, there was no need to continue investigating it. It was about time to give some benefit to this kid, so he would start to serve the Mu family. He would definitely not approach Mu Ningxue. However, he could send him to his eldest son, Mu Jiangming, and nurture him into a remarkable fire element henchman. That was not a bad plan. A talented person still needed to be recruited. Mu Zhuiyun stroked his beard, feeling somewhat happy. After seeing Mo Fan exiting the examination ground, he opened his mouth to say, Mo Fan, come here. Mo Fan glanced at Mu Zhuiyun. He wasn't sure what this old scoundrel wanted from him. With some hesitation, Mo Fan walked over in front of the directors. His eyes couldn't help but take a glance at Mu Ningxue. Damn, I haven't seen this girl in so many years. How come she looks so beautiful? Mu Zhuiyun underscore hemped underscore. Mu Ningxue also moved her gaze away. Mo Fan also withdrew his gaze. You called? Mo Fan raised his head and looked at the Mu Zhuiyun's tall and sturdy physique. In front of others, Mo Zhuiyun would have a whiff of the prestige of a king, causing them to feel even afraid to breathe in front of him. Mo Fan was different. Other than raising a beautiful daughter, to him, Mo Juyin only emitted the aura of an old scoundrel. Our Mu family received some cultivation resources for the fire element a while ago. Unfortunately, most of the people in the manor are ice elemental users. Your fire elemental talent is not bad at all. Your cultivation even surprised me. Thus, I'd like to give these resources to you. From now on, when you're not attending classes, you may cultivate with Mu Jiangming, Mu Zhuiyun said as he stroked his beard. These words were said in public. From Mu Zhuiyun's point of view, doing this also gave Mo Fan a lot of face. The branch disciples within the manor scheme, wanting to display their abilities to me. Yet, I don't even give them the slightest bit of attention. A person like Mo Fan, who isn't even a disciple of the Mu family, receiving this kind of opportunity is simply a huge leap in fortune. In this society, there would always be some exceptions. With him being the head of the Mu family, he couldn't just be narrow or small-minded and only pay attention to the disciples within. Brother, how could this be? Mu Bai's talent is even better. Perhaps he was just a bit nervous today. Thus, he wasn't able to display his utmost abilities. Also, he is from our family. To begin with, Mu-He was extremely shocked. He hastily spoke to Mu-He. After Mu Bai, who felt as though his heart had been pierced by thousands of arrows, heard this. He seemed as if he were a corpse being viciously whipped all over. It was a hideous appearance. Damn, that was the opportunity to become an inner disciple which Mu Bai was looking for. Mu Bai racked his brain so that he could erase the title of being just a branch disciple. Only after becoming a true core disciple of the Mu family would he receive even more generous cultivation resources and no longer be that half a young master who freeloads under someone else's roof. It doesn't matter if he didn't receive it, but it was taken away by the person he hated the most. This corpse was so pissed off. It almost resurrected. I've already made the decision. Mu-He, you do not need to speak anymore. Mu Zhuiyun waved his hand. His face maintained that slight smile as he looked at Mo Fan. What's wrong? Are you getting too happy? Hurry up and thank this master for his kindness? Mu Zhuiyun was relatively pleased with the fact that he could forget the former enmity and recruit the student who had no background. It seemed like he was a very understanding ruler. Mo Fan, why are you still startled? Hurry up and thank master for his good grace. Xuan Mushing hastily urged Mo Fan. Zhang Xiaoho, Lu Xiaobing, and Su Qinglin were admiring him to no end. In the past, Mo Fan was just a small, insignificant thing that one wouldn't be able to find in the sea of people. In just a flash, he had become Mr. Perfect. Mo Fan looked at Mu Zhuiyun, who had a slight smile on his face. His own expression was quite startled. Mo Fan regained his senses. He squished his lips together. After a period had passed, Mo Fan finally opened his mouth. Did your brain get flooded with water or something? What did you say? Mu Zhuiyun's face was filled with doubt. It seemed like he didn't hear what the kid said. I said, did water flood your brain or something? Mo Fan asked what he had before, word for word. Everyone was able to clearly hear these words. However, their expressions were filled with confusion. What? Brain get flooded? He said Mu Zhuiyun's brain was flooded? Heavens, this Mo Fan has gone crazy. Mu Zhuiyun heard this very clearly. He ferociously blew his beard as he carried a bit of rage and replied, your next few words better be a good explanation, or else. An explanation? Of course, I have one. Mo Fan nodded as he continued. Don't act like you didn't suppress my family 3 years ago with your strong sense of justice. I, Mo Fan, am not someone who you can slap and then give some benefit for me to devote my life to you. 3 years ago, you said things to my dad and I that were as if you were looking at a dog. Your memory may be bad, but I remember it very clearly. I'll just tell you like this, you old scoundrel. Don't say that you want me to join your family as a disciple for my sake. Even if you were to send Mu Ningxue along with a dowry to me, so I could enter your family, I still wouldn't do it. Do you really think that all the people in the world revolve around your Mu family? And you even expect me to be moved to tears? Other than your brain getting flooded, I can't think of what other kinds of problems you would have today. As he cursed, it was as though the suppressed anger within his heart was completely spat out. The entire process was completely smooth. The principal, the school directors, Director Deng Kai, Mu He, Mu Bai, Zhao Kunsen, Xue Mushing, the students of 8th class, as well as Mu Ningxue were completely shocked. Mu Zhuiyun's face was exceedingly gloomy at this point. Creak, as he was angered by this. Beneath Mu Zhuiyun's feet grew a frozen, firm crystal ice. The cold aura emanated from the person's anger was pervading throughout the air. Mu Zhuiyun was angry, really angry. He didn't know how many years it had been since someone spoke to him like this. Calling him the tyrant of Bo City wasn't completely wrong. The high-tiered people of the same generation, the principals of the magic schools, the high-status people from Magic Association, and even Deng Kai from the Hunters Union would always treat him with respect. Even the people from the manor would be unable to breathe when they were in front of him. Who just gave this kid, Mo Fan, the guts to talk to him like that? The aura filled the grounds. A frightening ice ground. The grounds filled with sand and grains were completely frozen into a solid ice crystal in just a few seconds with Mu Zhuiyun in the center. The icy aura was vicious. The hot, summer day suddenly became winter. The training grounds also turned into an ice floor like a gigantic mirror. This mind-blowing scene scared the school students and caused them cry out in fear. The training ground turned into an ice floor in just an instant. Mu Zhuiyun didn't even cast any magic. He only relied on his aura to freeze the entire training ground. Just what kind of boundary had his cultivation reached? Comparing Mu Bai's previous, small ice spread, Mu Zhuiyun was simply a huge monster, incomparable. Zhuiyun, control your mood. This is a school, and there are also students with no defensive capabilities. The school director, who was also from the Hunters Union, Deng Kai, suddenly stood up, standing between Mu Zhuiyun and Mo Fan. As Deng Kai stood in between them, Mu Zhuiyun's intimidating power became somewhat weaker. However, the people in the surroundings were still intimidated to the point where they had difficulties breathing. As Deng Kai stood in between them, a few people who could still move and Mrs. Tang Yue's pace came to a halt. Tang Yue didn't permit Mu Zhuiyun to harm her students, even if she wasn't a match for the Mu Zhuiyun, the ice elemental family head. Mo Fan, you shameful thing. What are you saying? Immediately apologized to Mr. Mu Zhuiyun. Mu He said with great anger. Was this Mo Fan stupid beyond redemption or something? He even had the guts to act like this in front of Mu Zhuiyun. Was his family tired of living? Apologize? Of course I will. However, he must also apologize to me regarding the matter from 3 years ago. Don't think you can scare me with your high cultivation and authority. This Mu Zhuiyun used his cultivation to bully me, a student who hasn't even turned 18 yet. Let's put it like this. If you were the same age as me, I would be able to beat you up real good. Mo Fan's fearless gesture was currently being displayed in great detail. Bullshit! Mu Zhuiyun was getting really pissed off by this bastard kid, so much that he directly began to swear. When Mu Zhuiyun was at his age, even though his talent may not have matched Mu Ningxue's, he was still a genius. He naturally didn't place any of the students within Tianlan Magic High in his eyes. Mo Fan, you really are shamelessly daring. Don't even mention Master Mu Zhuiyun when he was young. We could randomly grab a core disciple from the current Mu family, and he'd be able to beat you down with a single move. That's right. We don't even need to use core disciples. Mu Bai could duel you in magic. If you lose, then you must kneel down and apologize to Master Mu. At this time, Mu Bai came to life and jumped down to be used as a dog by Mu Zhuiyun. Mu Bai and Mo Fan were peers. It would be a fair duel. Let's see what other excuses you'll have. Thought Mu Bai. With this, Mu Bai would beat Mo Fan to death and firmly ease Master Mu Zhuiyun's resentments. Not necessary. Just as Mu Bai was about to step up bravely, an icy, arrogant voice resounded. Everyone's gaze immediately turned toward the voice that spoke up. The person who said this was precisely Mu Ningxue. Who would have imagined that Mu Ningxue would make a move at this time? Mu Ningxue came between her father and Mo Fan. Her gaze was like an ice mountain that carried a bit of anger. The person she was angry at was naturally Mo Fan. Since you said my father only knows how to bully the younger generation, since you said that my father used his authority to suppress you, and you relied on your own cultivation to develop your magic. In that case, I'm the same age as you. I'll compete with you. In Mu Ningxue's tranquil voice was an icy power. Ningxue? After Mu Zhuiyun saw his own daughter come out, the anger on his face changed into astonishment. As Mo Fan saw that it was Mu Ningxue who was facing him, his face sprouted a smile that said he'd rather die than surrender. Interesting, even Mu Ningxue came forth he thought. The truth is, facing a worthless person like Mu Bai was completely useless. Mo Fan had already stomped him over earlier today. However, Mu Ningxue had been credited as the #1 girl genius of Bo City, and a blessed daughter of the heavens within the imperial institution. Thus, having her duel him would prove to be much more interesting. Ningxue, I am enough to deal with this guy. There's no need for you to, Mu Bai promptly said with a smile. My father has been thoroughly humiliated. My father can be magnanimous and not bother with this sharp-tongued little thief. However, I, as his daughter, simply will not let the person who has humiliated my father off. We'll settle it by using an impartial magic duel. Each and every word said by Mu Ningxue was sincere. There was not a hint of hesitation in her voice. Well said. This icy, lofty, and unyielding character makes us, the older generation, very gratified. As expected of the #1 genius of Bo City, having an outstanding talent at such a young age while having the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. School director Deng Kai immediately began praising her. After he praised her, Director Deng Kai also patted Mu Zhuiyun's back as he said, Brother Zhuiyun, having you deal with this rude kid is not necessary at all. Naturally, you can't return to when you were 16 to duel him, proving whether he's better than you when you were young. It's better to let your daughter Mu Ningxue take your place in this matter and silence this kid that does not know the immensity of heavens and earth. Mu Zhuiyun didn't say anything as he just stared at Deng Kai. As Deng Kai saw that Mu Zhuiyun was still able to control his temper, he gave a slight smile before he walked in front of Mo Fan and said, Mo Fan, right? As the person in charge of the Hunters Union within Bo City, I really am not sure on whether your actions today can be described as you being young and inexperienced, or just simply stupid. However, you should apologize to Mu Zhuiyun for your hot-headed action. The contributions he has made to Bo City are far beyond what you can comprehend. Apologize? That's not a problem. I can cover my entire body in thorns and use the most traditional method, kowtowing, to apologize to him. I'll even kowtow until he's satisfied. However, are the Mu family in the right to have me apologize to them? Go ask them regarding what they said to my family 3 years ago. If I were to apologize, then it'd be after they have apologized for the matter 3 years ago. Since he is a respected person of Bo City, then they should know better than to provoke nobodies. You can slap a nobody to death with just a single palm, but before they get slapped to death, they would definitely curse you till your brain breaks. Mo Fan said without inhibition. This is a society ruled by law. How could this kind of thing happen? At most, we'd just expel you, the principal said as he creased his eyebrows. All right, since things have come to this point, then it's not as difficult to deal with as I thought. Then we'll do according to what Mu Ningxue said. She will have a magic duel with you. If you lose, then you will have to apologize until Mu Zhuiyun is satisfied. If Mu Ningxue loses, as Deng Kai reached this point, his gaze turned toward Mu Zhuiyun. Mu Zhuiyun said with a cold voice, How could Mu Ningxue lose? You don't need to talk spouts so much garbage. Just say if you dare or not. Mo Fan's tone carried a sharp dagger. Dignity wasn't something that would be grander just because you're from an aristocratic family. Even more so if your own family was homeless, miserable, and lower than dirt. Mo Fan was just a nobody who sought revenge for his grievance. Haven't joined Mu family? Mo Fan was unable to forget the words Mu Zhuiyun said 3 years ago that sounded as though he was disciplining a dog. And he definitely was unable to forget the fact that he was responsible for them being homeless. If he were eager to go back to them just because Mu Zhuiyun threw him a bone, then he himself would really be a dog. At that point, how would he be any different from Zhao Kunsen and Mu Bai? Saying profanities to him? That should be normal. 3 years ago, when he was just 13 years old, he had the guts to point at Mu Zhuiyun and call him an old scoundrel. Now that he was 16 years old, how could he possibly be afraid of him? Once bitten by a snake, 3 years shy from the rope. This was a phrase that was well disposed to Mo Fan. If a snake dared to bite him, then he would definitely act like the snake was a rope and swing it away. When you were already being seen as an ant in someone's eyes, there was no way for you to run away from that colossal foot. You might as well just curse at them until you were satisfied. Brother Zhuiyun, do you agree? Deng Kai acted like a mediator. Currently, the argument and cursing had been seen by the entire school. If they were able to direct this ugly affair towards a fair magic duel, that would naturally be the best option. If they really were to expel this student called Mo Fan, it would be meaningless. It would cause the school to lose a genius. Being able to take the #1 spot in Tianlan Magic High meant he was indeed a good seedling. As Mu Ningxue heard this, her forehead creased. My adopted son, Yuang, is the same age as you. I'll have him duel you, Mu Zhuiyun said. Or, Mu Ningxue wanted to say something. Mu Zhuiyun didn't give Mu Ningxue a chance to speak, turning toward Deng Kai and saying, Deng Kai, I know you tend to look after the younger generation. However, even you saw this kid speaking so rudely to me. I have taken a step back, letting him have a chance to measure his ability with my adoptive son, Yuang. If he loses, then this kid will kowtow to me until I'm completely satisfied. If he wins, I will apologize. The lousy matter from 3 years, Mu Zhuiyun naturally did not place in my eyes. As Mu Bai and Mu He heard this, a smile suddenly emerged on their faces. Yuang. Let Yuang deal with it, Mu Zhuiyun sure was shrewd. He guessed that Mu Ningxue's sudden stance was most likely to help this kid exonerate himself. How could Mu Zhuiyun possibly let Mo Fan off the hook so easily? Even if Mu Ningxue wholeheartedly wanted to help him dissolve this matter, he would definitely not suppress his tone. Yuang was the cultivation lunatic of the Mu family. Whenever someone mentioned this person, their whole body would feel a chill. If they were to let Yuang handle this matter, then it was guaranteed that Mo Fan would suffer a miserable death. The regulations of the Magic Association state that both of the parties involved in the magic duel need to be 18 years old. Thus, allow me, Deng Kai, to act as a witness for this matter. The day when Mo Fan and Yuang have both reached the age of 18, they will engage in a magic duel. Deng Kai said sincerely. Mu Zhuiyun coldly humphed. Mo Fan nodded his head. I'd have a bit of difficulty to make my move against a woman, thus switching to a man is good. I'll beat him until his father won't recognize him. As Mu Zhuiyun heard Mo Fan still slandering him, he was so enraged he blew into his beard. Wait and see. During the magic duel at the age of 18, we'll make you lose your pride and cover your body with wounds. The Magic Association, the Hunters Union, and the Magic Schools. These organizations unconditionally protected the magic students. However, as soon as they reached 18, they came of age. Magicians would then have to hold responsibility for their own actions. At the moment, Mu Zhuiyun had no need to lower himself to the same level as a sharp-mouthed kid. In 2 years, when he had come of age, Mu Zhuiyun might as well let him hover between life and death. Mu Zhuiyun had gotten so angry that he already left. The principal and the others naturally followed behind him. As Mu Ningxue was leaving, she gave Mo Fan a meaningful look. She wanted to say something, but while at the same time, she didn't know what to say. Mo Fan knew Mu Ningxue was helping him. Her trying to deal with this matter personally was far better than Mu Zhuiyun personally dealing with it. If someone of Mu Zhuiyun's level were to make a move, they would bring a deadly strike against Mo Fan and his family. Unfortunately, her plan was seen through by her father, Mu Zhuiyun. Mu Zhuiyun knew that Mu Ningxue would be lenient, and thus he switched to a different person. The cultivation madman of Mu family, Yuang, would deal with Mo Fan. Mu Yuang was very obedient to Mu Zhuiyun. If Mu Zhuiyun wanted Mu Yuang to kill Mo Fan, Yuan would do it without hesitation. Mu Zhuiyun had no reason to be lenient toward a little thing that dared to swear at him. For now, he would just let Mo Fan pass the time at the school in ease for 2 years. Once Mo Fan graduated, Mu Zhuiyun would have him see that going against the Mu family was just asking for trouble. The disturbance finally calmed down and petered out. All of the students looked at the Mo Fan, who had been turned into a divine student, as they were reminded of his actions just now. None of them knew what to say. This Mo Fan was crazy. Against the Mu family, a magic family household, and a noble one, who could pull out anyone and still be able to pressure Tianlan Magic High. What made this extremely clear was the fact that Mu Bai, an elite student within Tianlan Magic High, was just a branch disciple within the Mu family. Although Mo Fan's performance today had indeed startled everybody, however, that did not mean he had the qualifications to provoke a colossal family like the Mu family. Originally he could have become a dragon. Now, there was basically no difference between him and Trash, who didn't know of the Mu family being the largest in Bo City. If you offended the Mu family, then how could you continue to survive in Bo City? Within the school, there was barely the holy ground to protect you. Once you were out in society, you would definitely be dealt with until you had become a tragic sight. Willful. Why was he so willful? The opportunity so many people were hoping for was dropped by Mo Fan's willfulness, leaving behind a colossal foe. Brother Fan, you are too cool. We are scared to death by Master Mu Zhuiyun. Only you would call him an old scoundrel over and over again. Haha. In fact, many of us also call him an old scoundrel on the inside. Zhang Xiaoho's temperament was somewhat shy, but he had a particular adoration for Mo Fan. Mo Fan was the king of the children within this area of the city. Back in the days, he could gather masses with a single call. Even Zhao Kunsen mingled with big brother Mo Fan. Only after that incident did Zhao Kunsen start to rely on Mu Bai, and many others no longer dared to play with Mo Fan. Zhang Xiaoho was devoted to Mo Fan. No matter what kind of over-the-boundary thing Mo Fan had done, he would still lift even his feet to clap in admiration. Zhang Xiaoho knew of the matter from 3 years ago, and now that he had seen Mo Fan striking back without hesitation or fear, he began to admire Mo Fan even more. He would never be as bold as Mo Fan in his lifetime. Then, do you think Mu Ningxue has been charmed by me? Mo Fan said as he raised his eyebrow in satisfaction. That's hard to say. After all, that old scoundrel is her father, Zhang Xiaoho replied. I feel really good today. When I go to the cafeteria later, I'll get an extra fried egg. Mo Fan patted Zhang Xiaoho's shoulder as he felt a flush of success before walking towards the cafeteria. Haha, if you saw the looks on Mu Bai and Zhao Kunsen, then you'd definitely feel even better, Zhang Xiaoho said as he vented his resentment. That henchman, Zhao Kunsen, had really been beaten until his face had swollen up. Xiao Yu bet Kunsen couldn't even dream of Mo Fan's cultivation being higher than his by more than a level. Whereas Mu Bai, there's no need to say more about that. All he did was act like someone he was not and assault the poor on a regular basis. And what was the result of that? In the end, the wise martial god, Brother Fan, still got rid of him. Forget it. Mu Bai really was trying to curry favor with Mu, he like a son. He just wanted Mu He to help him enter the Mu family's inner court and cultivate together with the core disciples. In the end, that old scoundrel didn't even take a look at him at all. Instead, he was fixated on Mo Fan. What really stupefied people was that Mo Fan had directly thrown away what Mu Bai dreamed of like it was trash, while at the same time, he even made the old scoundrel lose face. Refreshing, it was truly refreshing. Xiao didn't understand what that old scoundrel, Mu Zhuiyun, was thinking. 3 years ago, the old scoundrel had already experienced Mo Fan's viper tongue and vicious temperament. Yet, today, he attempted to dismiss the former debt, which merely resulted in Mo Fan, who didn't hide any of his cards, slandering him greatly. He reckoned Mu Zhuiyun's blood pressure today had risen by a lot. However, Brother Fan, if that old scoundrel really gave his daughter to you along with a dowry, while begging you to join the Mu family, would you really decline? Zhang Xiaoho whispered. Of course not. Damn, Brother Fan. Where are your morals? Eh, what you said does make sense. Mo Fan suddenly rubbed his chin as he pondered. You also think you don't have morals? Xiaoho wondered. Get out of here. I'm saying that the old scoundrel's apology is useless. It'd be better if he just gave his daughter to me with a dowry. Mo Fan answered. Brother Fan, you should stop daydreaming. That Yuan really is abnormal. We don't even know if you will see the sunlight of your second day as an 18-year-old. You should just stop wishing to marry the little princess. Yuan? Watch me make him look for his teeth on the floor. In the past, Mo Fan would consider whether he was capable of opposing the whole Mu family. So how could the current Mo Fan be afraid of merely the disciples in the younger generations? The ire in his left hand would scorch their outsides crisp and their insides tender, while the lightning in his right hand would lacerate their flesh. The final results of the annual examination had been released. When the large blackboard showed Mo Fan in first place, there were numerous people who madly rubbed their eyes in disbelief. How was this Mo Fan so amazing? His examination results were surprisingly impressive. How did he surpass even the lightning element's Su Zhaoding and that Mu Bai from the ice elemental family? The matter with the grades had already caused numerous people to widen their eyes. The matter of Mo Fan cursing Mu Zhuiyun in front of everyone and challenging a disciple of the Mu family, with the school supervisors being the witnesses, had quickly been spread amongst the students. As a result, it didn't take long before Mo Fan became famous in the school. Not only did he become a divine student of the school in a flash, even more surprising was that he was the most reckless student in all of Bo City. The people who had some experience understood that Tianlan Magic High wasn't for your average magicians. There were some impressive students within the 1,500 student body. Sure. However, it was simply not on the same level as some certain magic highs and the noble families with deep foundations. The Hunters Union, Magic Association, big families and noble families. Any random magician from them would be enough to suppress all of them. The school was certainly a good choice for both grassroots and dragons. However, that didn't mean that you could go challenge those second-generation wizards. Mo Fan didn't care about the gossip happening around the school. Other than meditating and practicing spellcasting, he would eat and sleep. The only thing worth mentioning was that Mo Fan was placed within the elite class. The elite class had 100 individuals total. They were all in a large classroom and practiced in a large training ground. The students in the elite class were generally capable of controlling 7 stars. It was just that they weren't proficient enough in spellcasting. Thus, when it was time for practical classes, each of the elite elemental students demonstrated their magical prowess. The teacher for the practical classes remained Mrs. Tangyue. It was said that this newly arrived practical teacher's cultivation had far surpassed any of the other practical teachers within the school. Even though she hadn't been in the school for more than half a year, the elite class practical classes were being taught by her. The homeroom teacher of the elite class also remained Xue Mushing. His class had 2 S-grade students. If he wasn't the homeroom teacher for the elite class, who else could it be? It was because of Mo Fan that Xue Mushing obtained so many benefits from the school supervisors. Naturally, the school supervisors had repeatedly instructed Xue Mushing to fix Mo Fan's rebellious temperament. Xue Mushing got a headache over this matter. He felt that whether Mo Fan was a failure in school or a divine student, he was just like Buddha, hard to please. The new term went by, yet another month passed in a flash. The homeroom teacher, Xue Mushing, was standing in the elite class and coughed, signaling everyone to control their excitement. Why were the students so excited today? Today was the day where the school distributed the Stardust magic tools to the elite class. There was naturally another benefit to being students of the elite class other than having the best teachers. The reason behind why those large magic associations and ancient magic families were so much more ahead of them. Excluding the fact they had abundant knowledge, secrets, and experience, the most important reason would be due to the Stardust magic tool. Let's put it like this. Experience, knowledge, secrets, and teachings would be the software, whereas the Stardust magic tool would be the most important hardware. Other large ancient families had all sorts of software, and their technology was first-rate. Even if an average magician could learn everything from school, they still wouldn't have the hardware that could be compared to the ancient families. That is to say, this Stardust magic tool was quite qualitative. It was capable of nurturing the soul and cultivation, and it would relieve the fatigue the magician would experience after meditation, allowing them to continue practicing. To put it in a way that made more sense, it was like a cooler decreasing the cooldown of meditation. There was no way around it. Mo Fan wasn't a paid player. He naturally had to go through the school to obtain the necessary cultivation resources. The competition in school was quite big. It was simply like gold and sand. Fortunately, he was firmly placed on the first rank. Thus, the magic resources he obtained from the school shouldn't be a small amount. This way, he would be able to cultivate in peace. The usage time for the Stardust magic tool will be based on the rankings of your annual examination. The higher you are placed, the longer you will be allowed to use it. Naturally, our school is very fair, and thus we will conduct an examination every quarter of the year and rearrange the rankings. The Stardust magic tool usage will then change according to the new ranking. The other thing to take note of is that you are currently the students of the elite class, and you possess an advantage a common class doesn't have. However, don't believe for a second that your position is safe. During the quarter-year examination, the last 10 people will directly be downgraded to the common class, and the top 10 of the common class will be upgraded to the elite class. Thus, the pressure of the competition is increasingly big. Shui Mushing said. This part was no different than his previous world. Mo Fan didn't think anything of it. There were a lot of people who didn't like school, and even more who didn't like high school exams. However, there was one phrase that wasn't wrong. How are you going to stand on equal ground with a wealthy second generation if you don't have an education nor tests? The school's cultivation resources were not necessarily worse than the large ancestral families. The only difference was that the schools had gold and sand. You'd also have to agree to one phrase. Only gold is able to shine. Mo Fan, as the number one in class, you ought to be the first to use the Stardust magic tool, and also have it for the longest duration. However, due to your disrespect toward your elders during the annual examination, the time you are allowed to use it has been changed to 10 days, down from a month. This is your penalty, Shui Mushing said with a solemn face. From a month to 10 days, that penalty is way too high. If he could hold himself back from being so impudent, then the 1 month worth of time would be enough to pull him apart from many others by a lot. Some students started to discuss these words. If he were to bluntly lower his head and agree to joining the Mu family, then he'd most likely receive even more. Yeah, why is he so stubborn? Shui Mushing glared, causing the students to quiet down. Mo Fan, do you have any objections regarding this penalty? Shui Mushing said. I do not, Mo Fan replied. Mo Fan naturally needed a Stardust magic tool. His cultivation time was already longer than that of others, and with the help of the Stardust magic tool, he would be able to do half the work for twice the results. However, it would only have this effect if used continuously over a long period of time. If it was used only in short intervals, it would bring very little value to Mo Fan. 10 days of use? They would do nothing for him. Green Tea Man, let me ask you a question. Mo Fan approached the table of Mu Bai next to him with a solemn expression. What the hell did you just call me? Mu Bai's violent temperament immediately appeared. Mu Bai, let me ask you a question. If you've got things to say, say it. Mu Bai was bitter. He didn't want to look at Mo Fan for even a second. Unfortunately, Mo Fan was strange. This Mo Fan had something to ask him? The two should be irreconcilable. That guy named Yuang, is he in possession of a Stardust magic tool for all 365 days of the year? Mo Fan asked. Mu Fan began to laugh coldly as he said, originally, he was only allowed to use it 3 to 4 months per year. But thanks to you, he is now permitted to use it for longer than half a year at a time. Mo Fan nodded his head and continued asking, I've already provoked the old scoundrel to this extent. That old scoundrel still doesn't give it to that guy called Yuang for a whole year? Is it that the old scoundrel is too greedy? Or is he just underestimating me? Do you think the Stardust magic tool is just a rock on the sidewalk, something there's a lot of? The entire family has so many disciples. Thus, the Stardust magic tool definitely has to have turns. Within the family, only Mu Ningxue has a spirit-grade Stardust magic tool, which she keeps on at all times, Mubai said as he looked down on Mo Fan. Spirit grade Stardust magic tool? The Stardust magic tools have different grades? Mo Fan asked in shock. He only knew of the effect of the Stardust magic tool. He wasn't aware of the fact that there were different grades of them. Mubai looked at Mo Fan as though he was looking at a retard. Underscore, this retard simply knows nothing. Just how did he cultivate to S grade? Underscore. Mubai was very proud and wanted to display his knowledge. Thus, he was showing how much he despised Mo Fan on one hand, while on the other he said, Stardust magic tools naturally have good and bad ones. The soul-nourishing magic tools which we are able to interact with are basically all common grade. I reckon there's only a very few of the spirit grade ones in the entirety of Bo City. What effects do the spirit grades ones have? Mo Fan continued asking. Common grade, it is able to roughly increase cultivation time by 20% every day. Spirit grade, it is able to increase the cultivation time by 40%. Mubai sneered at him. As he was talking about the spirit grade Stardust magic tools, Mubai's entire being was unable to hold back on his fascination for it. To people like him who had only just taken their first step onto the road of cultivation, these spirit grade Stardust magic tools were simply perfect. Possessing one would easily allow him to surpass those of the same age. I see. Mo Fan nodded his head. One that could cut accumulated fatigue by 20% and one that could cut it by 40%. Mo Fan was quite able to understand this effect. Don't get too ahead of yourself. The cultivation magic tool you obtained you get for only 10 days. Whereas I will have it for a whole month. I'll quickly surpass you by thousands of miles. Mubai exclaimed without hesitation, pouring a bucket of cold water over Mo Fan. Mo Fan didn't mind. If he were to quarrel with nobodies like Mubai and Zhao Kunsen, that would simply lower his social status. His real enemies were the inner disciples of Mu family that possessed rich resources. He planned to surmount all difficulties and make that old scoundrel promise his daughter and deliver a dowry to the man in front of him. Remember, the Stardust magic tools are very, very precious. You must not in any way damage it. Moreover, once the time is up, you must return it. I have already reminded all of you, this isn't something you can blindly make trouble for, Shua Mushing said with a very serious tone. On the nightfall, the dormitory had already turned off all the lights. Darkness fell around the entire campus. On the roof of the school building, Mo Fan was sitting on top of a large water storage tank as he played with the Stardust magic tool he had received today. The Stardust magic tool was a tiny, azure-colored dust stone that was set within a very precious casing. One could tell how much the school valued the Stardust magic tool. The tool had been polished with a white chain passing through it. This allowed cultivators to wear it like a pendant on their chest. Does it work as soon as I put it on? Mo Fan asked himself. Lowering his head a bit, Mo Fan slowly put the Stardust magic tool on. Since the chain was a bit long, the tool ended up laying on Mo Fan's chest. Ding. Suddenly, an unfathomable tapping echoed out of Mo Fan's chest. Mo Fan was stunned before he finally came back to his senses. He was wearing yet another necklace about his neck. This loach-shaped pendant was pitch black. He remembered that on the day he awakened his element, this thing was vibrating incessantly. The Stardust magic tool must have bumped into his loach-shaped pendant, explaining the sound from just now. Speaking of which, just what was this loach pendant? Mo Fan had actually been trying to research the construction behind it, but ultimately failed. At the same time, he was very convinced that the loach pendant was the reason behind the changes to the world. The loach pendant was the legacy of the old gatekeeper of the school's back mountain, Old Man Ing. That day, he was wearing this exact loach pendant as he slept in that thatched cottage when the whole world began to mysteriously change, where he transmigrated into a different parallel world. He still wasn't sure of which. Mo Fan always wore the loach pendant, and he was a little worried about removing it, in case everything would return to normal if he were to do so. Man, I went through great difficulties to learn Lightning Strike and Flame Burst. Forget it, don't worry about him. I should pay more attention to my own cultivation. That guy Yuan won't be easy to deal with. Furthermore, if that old scoundrel really were willing to deliver his daughter to me, it will be impossible if I don't have incredible power? Mo Fan thought to himself. As he put down the Loach pendant, Mo Fan used his intent to enter the Stardust magic tool, which he had just received. Intent appeared after a magician's spiritual mind had reached a formidable level. When you focused the intent of your spiritual mind and locked it onto something, you could perceive the peculiar fluctuations of magic ability, and your senses of hearing, smell, sight, and touch would become stronger than an ordinary person. Strange, there's no reaction. Schwemmmushing said as long as you enter it with your intent and leave behind a spiritual imprint, then the Stardust magic tool will transmit its nourishing spiritual energy to your body, allowing a magician's body to obtain a nourishing effect as well as relieving spiritual fatigue. Mo Fan attempted this a few times. He didn't feel the wonderful response from the Stardust magic tool, which Schwemmmushing had described. The Loach pendant had overflowing energy? Mo Fan's expression was shocked as he hastily probed the Loach pendant with his intent. As he probed it with his intent, Mo Fan's entire being felt as though he landed in a hot spring. Silky smooth warmth caused his exhausted spiritual condition to slowly disperse, while it also slowly caused his own spiritual world to become clear and cozy. He felt no agitation nor anxiety. His state of mind had never been so tranquil and cozy before. Mo Fan had already cultivated for a whole 10 hours today. Before this, he would already have gone to sleep. Today, he had the Stardust magic tool, and he wanted to try it out. The surging fatigue he felt was alleviated under this balmy sensation. He felt like he could still continue to cultivate for a little while longer. Oh crap, underscore. Underscore, what is this? Underscore. The Stardust magic tool given by school was of no use. Instead, the Loach pendant, which he had always brought with him, began to show the effect the Stardust magic tool should have shown. Underscore, is it possible? Is it possible that this Loach pendant that I have always worn is actually a Stardust magic tool? Underscore. Mo Fan began to feel a bit of excitement. Underscore, wrong, there's something wrong, underscore. Underscore, I used my intent to probe it before, but the Loach pendant was like the Dead Sea. So why did it become a spirit-nourishing hot spring today? Underscore. Underscore, while at the same time, the school's Stardust magic tool that should have some effect just happens to be out of use? Underscore. Shit. Don't tell me the Loach pendant absorbed the Stardust magic tool's internal energy. Mo Fan suddenly made an astonished wild guess. Mo Fan immediately concentrated his intent once more. This time, he quickly probed the fluctuations between the two magic tools. As expected, Mo Fan could feel the Stardust magic tool had a trace of hidden energy in its deepest parts. However, this trace of energy was currently shifting. Underscore, accurately speaking, this freaking Loach pendant took a straw and started to suck in the energy from the school's Stardust magic tool. If I only realized this later, then I wouldn't have been able to find any kind of evidence, underscore. Freaking hell, little Loach, I never thought that you'd actually have some skill. After hiding it for so long, you've finally revealed it, Mo Fan swore as he grabbed the Loach pendant with one hand. Underscore, little Loach, go die Loach, underscore. Underscore, hurry and compensate my Stardust magic tool. How am I supposed to cultivate when you've drained all of its energy? Underscore. Underscore, however, the Loach pendant just released some energy for me to use. What I should worry about is how I'm supposed to explain to the school regarding this empty shell of a Stardust magic tool. Underscore. Underscore, furthermore, this little Loach pendant that I swear at every day seems to really be a freaking Stardust magic tool. Underscore. Mo Fan felt his own brain was not enough to process this. This information was too explosive. Underscore, calm down, I have to calm down, underscore. Underscore, I have to hurry and get to the end of this matter, underscore. Mo Fan continued sitting there, studying the two tools. He realized the little Loach pendant he wore actually seemed to have the same function as a Stardust magic tool. Mo Fan tried to make the little Loach pendant return the energy to the Stardust magic tool, but the Loach pendant had no reaction. Mo Fan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The great thing about it was the little Loach pendant was actually a really amazing Stardust magic tool. The real tragedy was that the school's Stardust magic tool had been wasted. There was not a shred of energy left in it. It was just like a pebble by the riverbank. The school gave the Stardust magic tool to him for 10 days. After 10 days, he had to return it to them in its original state. It's not like he could tell Schwem Mushing that he was bored, and thus he decided to remodel the Stardust magic tool into a loach shape. He can't even begin to guess what kind of expression Schwem Mushing would have after he saw the small loach pendant. Mrs. Tang Yue is experienced and knowledgeable. Perhaps she knows the reason behind this. Mo Fan knew that him being blindly anxious would be of no use, so he hastily sought some help. Mrs. Tang Yue was Mo Fan's #1 choice. After that time when Mrs. Tang Yue had seen through the schemes of Mu He and Mu Bai, Mo Fan, and she had established a deep teacher-to-student trust. Mrs. Tang Yue, are you sleeping? Mo Fan called Mrs. Tang Yue's phone. I'll just change into my pajamas, about to sleep. Tell me what you want. A sexy and gentle voice floated back to him. Mo Fan couldn't help but wonder about Mrs. Tang Yue's amazing appearance when wearing a transparent nightgown. My Stardust magic tool seemed to have a small problem. I don't know what to do right now. I could only call Mrs. Tang Yue to consult. Mo Fan assumed a pitiful student's demeanor. Where are you? After hearing Stardust magic tool, Mrs. Tang Yue seemed to turn somewhat serious. The Stardust magic tool was the most precious item in the school. If there was a problem, then it would be big. The third building's roof, on top of the dam. All right, give me 3 minutes. Mrs. Tang Yue quickly hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Mo Fan began to think to himself, _3 minutes. How could Mrs. Tang Yue possibly come here from the teacher's dormitory? Even if Zhang Xiaoho were to use Wind Trail, I reckon he'd need 5 minutes _. What's more, Mo Fan didn't think that Mrs. Tang Yue would come here without changing her attire. As Mo Fan was still indulging in his fantasies, a weak movement suddenly appeared on the pitch-black roof. This movement was extremely weak. If Mo Fan hadn't carefully noticed it from the beginning, he would have not seen it. It didn't seem to be in air fluctuations, nor was it the aura from elemental energy. The noiselessness caused him to feel somewhat terrified. Mo Fan? At last, a gentle and beautiful voice floated over. It's Mrs. Tang Yue? Mo Fan jumped in fright, hastily looking toward the open roof from his current location. The moonlight sprinkled over the intersection of the water pipes on the old roof. The black cloud shadow was revealing a bright, yet dark figure on the roof. The first thing that entered Mo Fan's vision was an indistinct silhouette emerging from the shadows. Immediately after, Mo Fan saw Mrs. Tang Yue wearing a long, woman-style coat coming out of the shadows of the dark clouds and into the area of moonlight. It felt like Mrs. Tang Yue had simply walked out of another door. Extremely shocking. What kind of ability is this? Mo Fan couldn't help but take a deep breath. He didn't even hear footsteps from the corridor. Just how exactly did Mrs. Tang Yue come to the roof and emerge from the shadows? What's wrong with your Stardust magic tool? Mrs. Tang Yue suddenly leapt down and landed on the dam. The bright moon illuminated Mrs. Tang Yue's impressive physique. It made Mo Fan's heart ripple. I don't know either. I did everything according to what Schwem Mushing said. I don't know what happened, but the Stardust magic tool's energy suddenly disappeared. And then what? Mo Fan was hesitating. He was wondering whether he should tell Mrs. Tang Yue about the little loach pendant or not. However, his understanding of this world was far too little. If he did not tell her about this matter, then Mrs. Tang Yue might not believe him. And then the energy was transferred into my pendant, Mo Fan told her. Regardless of what it was, he should put trust in this teacher. On the one hand, it was very likely that Tang Yue would see through him. On the other hand, he didn't know how to explain this whole matter to the school. Him slandering Mu Zhuiyun, the school would turn a blind eye to. However, breaking the Stardust magic tool, that would give Mu He enough of a reason to kick him out of Tianlan Magic High. You're saying that the Stardust magic tool given to you by the school has had its energy transferred to your pendant? Tang Yue widened her bright eyes as she revealed a somewhat disbelieving expression. Yes, Mo Fan nodded. Where did your pendant come from? Tang Yue's expression had an obvious change. Heritage, Mo Fan replied. Tang Yue immediately turned silent. Furthermore, she used her intelligent eyes to look at Mo Fan and then at his pendant. Have you told this matter to anyone else? Tang Yue's expression was very serious as she said this to Mo Fan. Mo Fan couldn't help but feel startled. This was like a classic TV show where they'd murder someone for their belongings. Seeing the surroundings, the weather, the dark night, a certain student couldn't handle the pressure of studying magic. Thus, he jumped off the roof. Wasn't everything conforming to the script? And not yet, Mo Fan replied. I'll have to resign myself to my fate. If my judgment is really that bad, then having who I thought to be the reliable Mrs. Tang Yue help me with this problem, I get whatever I deserve. Your pendant is also a stardust magic tool. At last, Mrs. Tang Yue opened her mouth. Mo Fan listened sincerely. However, it is different from the stardust magic tool we usually see. It is a growth-type stardust magic tool, Mrs. Tang Yue said with a severe gaze. Growth-type stardust magic tool? Mo Fan had never ever heard of this concept before. If you were to talk about embedding an attribute via a gem, he would understand that theory as there was lots of it in games. This stardust magic tool is an absolute gem under the heavens. This is due to it originally having the same function as other stardust magic tools, but it is also capable of growing. It is able to absorb the magical energy from other stardust magic tools in order to boost its own capabilities. After absorbing enough magical energies from other stardust magic tools, it is able to raise its spiritual level, Mrs. Tang Yue earnestly said to Mo Fan. As Mo Fan heard this, he felt great waves rolling within his heart. A stardust magic tool that is capable of growing? An extremely average stardust magic tool was considered a treasure by both the school and ancient families. Even an incomparably preeminent student would need to take turns to use it. It only showed how precious and rare they were. A spirit-grade stardust magic tool possessed twice the efficiency of a common-grade stardust magic tool. Mubai also said that within all of Bo City, one could find very few of them. One of the known ones was in Mu Ningxue's possession. One wouldn't need to guess to know that it is most likely a treasure of the Mu family. The little loach pendant actually possessed the ability to grow itself into a treasure of that level. Mo Fan had roughly guessed that this might be an incredible item, but he never thought that it would be incredible to that extent. Shit. Shit. With this kind of treasure, even a person with principles would feel jealous and kill another for the item. According to what people said, it was common for magicians to fight over a treasure. At the moment, he was only a small magician. If Mrs. Tang Yue really were to have a change of heart, then the news tomorrow really would have the story a certain genius from Tianlan Magic High jumped off the roof due to the pressure from school. More on page 2. Mrs. Tang Yue. I feel like a small magician such as myself is unable to manage a thing so precious. I'll give it to you so you can research it. Mo Fan wasn't a fool. Thus, he immediately said this sincerely. Even if Mrs. Tang Yue appeared to be a very righteous person, a person's character was very hard to predict. Mo Fan wasn't childish enough to think that Mrs. Tang Yue wasn't a bad person just because she's pretty. PSH, Tang Yue immediately started to laugh at what Mo Fan had said. The lovely scene of her laughing was touchingly beautiful. Mo Fan's expression was blank. He didn't know what he did to make a beauty like Tang Yue laugh like that. Mo Fan, on the day of the annual examination, when you righteously slandered Mu Zhuiyun from that small family, I thought you were a firm and unyielding man. Just now, I was thinking about confiscating your particular treasure. After all, it is not something a small magician like you is able to manage. However, I never thought that the firm and unyielding you would hand it over. That really makes my impression of you take a 180-degree turn. Mrs. Tang Yue's laugh seemed like a peach blossom to the ear. Mo Fan awkwardly laughed. An unyielding character is only worth so little. A life is more important. Scolding Mu Zhuiyun, Mo Fan was well aware of the consequences. If one were to integrate themselves into this society, one couldn't be so naive and stupid. Whether it was the Science Society or the Magic Society, maturing early, what's so bad about it? Then, Mrs. Tang Yue, how do you plan on solving this? Mo Fan asked her. All right, I know you were very reluctant to part with it. It's good that you told me about this. If it was any other teacher, they really would pull something disadvantageous to you in order to stand above thousands of others. Tang Yue's smile faded as she spoke seriously. Mo Fan's eyes shone. It seemed like he floated the right way this time. This Mrs. Tang Yue really was different from the other magic teachers who seemed to be righteous, but were something else on the inside. First, you cannot tell anyone about it being a growth-type Stardust magic tool. I reckon with your intelligence, you wouldn't tell anyone else anyway. Second, it's not because I'm not interested in your growth-type Stardust magic tool, but it is because the Stardust magic tool is somewhat special. It seems like it has a trace of an unbroken spiritual link with you, Mrs. Tang Yue told Mo Fan honestly. Wow, this thing was a binding equipment. Mo Fan really felt baffled. No wonder why every time he tried to remove the loach pendant, an indescribable resistance arose. Lastly, the growth-type Stardust magic tool needs to grow. It uses spirit essence and other Stardust magic tools as fuel. Currently, it is only a common grade Stardust magic tool. Despite the pendant being equipped with the ability to grow, whether it really will grow is hard to say. Or, the resources it requires to grow might be much larger than a spirit-grade Stardust magic tool. In that sense, your inherited family treasure might be no different than a trash-grade tool, Tang Yue said. Mo Fan nodded his head and thought a bit before asking, Mrs. Tang Yue, what is soul essence? At the moment a magical beast dies, its soul will leave its physical body. A soul leaving the body becomes a spirit after its life has ended. If the soul remains in the body after death, then it will emit a special spirit radiance. That type of soul after death would be 10 times more pure than a common soul, and is called a spirit essence. A spirit essence is an important material for refining a Stardust magic tool. As expected of a teacher, her easy explanation made Mo Fan have an urge to write it down. Basically, if I wanted to make it grow, then the best way would be to collect spirit essence. Alright, I better hurry up and increase my strength so I can go kill some magical beasts and collect spirit essences. Mo Fan said enthusiastically. Tang Yue nodded, followed by saying, hurry and collect them. Remember to send me a WeChat location before you die. I will go to the magical beast's stomach to retrieve your skeleton and the growth magic tool. The corner of Mo Fan's mouth stretched. He didn't know how to reply to that. Give me the broken Stardust magic tool that was given to you by the school. I'll settle this matter for you. This is me helping you privately. So just look at it as you owing me one. Mrs. Tang Yue wasn't joking as she said this. Thank you, Mrs. Tang Yue. If I can be of use in the future, don't hesitate to tell me. Mo Fan replied. Asking Mrs. Tang Yue for help was indeed not bad. The most headache-inducing problem had been solved by her. As long as I don't get expelled by the school, then I'm all right. Also, the little loach pendant obtaining the energy of the Stardust magic tool signifies that I'll be able to use it permanently. That was amazing. People like Mu Bai and Su Xiaoding would only be able to use the Stardust magic tool for a month, and even the Yuang, who was going to have a duel with Mo Fan, would only be allowed to use his for half a year. Mo Fan himself would be able to use it nonstop for a whole year. His cultivation would surpass them by a whole street. He couldn't help but give the little loach pendant a kiss. I guess that after you've tasted the benefits the Stardust magic tool will bring you, you will helplessly want to go and collect the spiritual essences. When the quarter of your school time is ended, we will bring you to the outside of the city for 2 months of practical experience. When the time comes for you to meet a real magical beast, you will forget about the idea you have today, Mrs. Tang Yue said. Practical experience? Mo Fan had never heard of this thing. Was this possibly the legendary high school military drill? Every magician needs to experience this day. We don't nurture magicians so they can stay home and live like princesses. Nor is it for you to compete against one another. It is for you to stand off against magical beasts during crucial times. The practical experience is a significant test of the student's temperament, Mrs. Tang Yue explained. I will treat this seriously. No, Tang Yue said, the practical experience isn't an exam. I only wish for you and other students to calm yourselves when you encounter a problem and ponder how you're going to survive it, Tang Yue said with an earnestly profound manner. After Mrs. Tang Yue said this, she turned around to leave. When Mo Fan was about to ask for more details, he realized her curvy body had slowly merged with the area where the moonlight didn't shine. A heartbeat later, there were no more traces of Tang Yue. Mo Fan was able to see everything very clearly this time. She really merged with the darkness. Her entire being disappeared as though she was never here. Mo Fan hastily jumped down from the dam and poked his head out of the railings of the roof. What made Mo Fan shocked was the fact that Mrs. Tang Yue had gone from the roof of the 8-floor tall school building and was already on the ground, treading with slow and light footsteps toward the teacher's dormitory. The gloomy moonlight stretched her shadow out, making her look like a proud night fairy. As Mrs. Tang Yue entered the shadow of a messy tree, she suddenly disappeared once again from his line of sight, and he was no longer able to find this mysterious female teacher in the dreary night. Just what kind of skill was that? Out of all of the elements that Mo Fan knew of, only the wind element was able to use wind trail to move swiftly. That fact alone made Mo Fan think it was amazing, but Mrs. Tang Yue used magic that he didn't know anything about. It practically let her enter the shadows to move swiftly. Underscore, that is just too cool. I wonder when I can learn this. Underscore. Speaking of which, this Mrs. Tang Yue didn't seem normal. According to the rumors, one would have to reach intermediate-level magician to awaken a second element. In other words, Mrs. Tang Yue was at least an intermediate-level magician. No wonder why Mrs. Tang Yue was able to surpass so many other qualified and older practical teachers. For most people, an intermediate-level magician had already reached the peak heaven level. Underscore, it seems like Mrs. Tang Yue is actually a very thick thigh. I will have to hold on to it tightly. Underscore. Backslash. Did you hear? After our quarter of cultivation time has ended, we will begin the magician's practical experience. What is the magician's practical experience? Basically, we're going to the areas outside of the city. No way, ever since I was a child, I've heard those areas have magical beasts that eat people. I'm not going. You have to go. This practical experience is related to our admittance to university. It is the equivalent of a very important subject. It's just practical experience. What is there to be afraid of? We're magicians. Even if we were to encounter a magical beast, we can just use ice spread to freeze it into an ice statue. However, I heard magical beasts are really strong. Didn't the magical beast teacher always stress about how we should never face a magical beast by ourselves? Just like what Mrs. Tang Yue said, after the end of their quarter of cultivation time, they immediately welcomed a cruel practical experience. If it went as planned, then they would meet a genuine magical beast. There had always been a magical beast class, and who knows how many years the teachers have been talking about them. However, for the students had never met a genuine magical beast. Even if they were to secretly watch a video of them on the internet, there was no difference to them between that and watching a Godzilla movie. This time, the students would finally get to meet a genuine magical beast. As soon as the news hit, it could be said that the entire school began to discuss this matter. The practical experience began with the elite class. All of the students of the elite class were basically able to control 7 stars after the end of the annual examination. Currently, it had been more than half a year. Thus, every single one of them should be able to expertly control their elemental skill. The school would let the students who could grasp their magical skills participate in the practical experience. If a common person were to encounter a magical beast, they wouldn't even have a bit of ability to retaliate. Backslash. The time passed by quickly. Mo Fan relied on his little loach pendant to cultivate his lightning and fire stars to more than 5 times their original levels. He was able to cast both lightning strike and fire burst skillfully. He was able to practice fire burst openly in school now, and thus the casting speed of his fire burst had gotten even faster. Roughly 3 seconds was enough for him to cast it now. As for lightning strike, he would need about 4 seconds. Currently, most of the students in the elite class would require 5 to 10 seconds to use a magic spell. Thus, Mo Fan was far above them in terms of spellcasting. The entire elite class had a total of 100 people. They would be divided into 5 groups with roughly 20 students in each. There would be a teacher with them, as well as 2 other military instructors. Every group had its own bus. Thus, the 5 school buses began to drive toward the outer areas of the city with groups of young magicians. The place they were going to this time had more or less been decided. They would be going to the Snowy Peak Mountain Station. The Snowy Peak Mountain was an important good stronghold for the Hunters of Hunters Union and Bow City. The entire stronghold was constructed in the middle of a valley. Do you remember when I told you that the stations in Bow City's surroundings are the boundaries of the safe area? The areas outside of the stations may have a magical beast appearing. Thus, before you have the abilities to face off against a magical beast, make sure you never step out of the safe areas or else you'll become a pile of skeletons, the magical beast teacher, Zhang Jingguo, told them strongly. That's right. Within the area of the station, we, the Hunters Union, and the Magic Association, as well as other large ancient families, assign someone to patrol daily and set up warnings. There will definitely not be any magical beasts entering the residential areas of humans. However, the capabilities of us magicians are also limited. Thus, the only places we are able to protect are within the boundaries of the stations. We are powerless outside of the stations. After all, even if we have stronger magicians, we are unable to eradicate the magical beasts hiding under all the complicated and difficult terrains, the 3rd Hunters Group's captain, Luo Yunbua, stated. Luo Yunbua was a tanned and very handsome man. After the girls in the groups saw Captain Luo Yunbua, their eyes began to sparkle. It was like the girls were worshipping and infatuated with the handsome military instructor. Luo Yunbua was the military instructor who guided the team this time. The assistant military instructor was a woman named Pan Lijun. She was a tanned, capable, and vigorous type. There was a huge difference between her and the female magicians from the campus. As they sat on the bus, they passed through the wasteland of the outer regions of the city. In just moments of time, mountain forest appeared in everyone's sight. The mountain forest was very green, deep, and its vicinity was luxuriant, sturdy, and vigorous. Weeds were growing. The distant mountain peak was uneven, and the clouds were thick. Do you see it? This lonely and mighty mountain is the Snowy Peak Mountain, and also the border of our Bow City. Our Bow City counts as a medium-sized city. At the frontline magic cities, empires, and large demonic cities, their safe borders wouldn't be called just a station, or even a small stronghold, said the assistant military instructor, Pan Lijun, whose hair was only the length of a forefinger. Speaking of which, since you guys regularly have contact with magical beasts, then that means you must be intermediate-level magicians? Wang Sampang said. Intermediate? Pan Lijun swept her gaze across Wang Sampang as she ridiculed him. Why would intermediate-level magicians guide you little brats around? As Wang Sampang heard this, he got upset and whispered, Then you guys are just primary-level magicians. That's nothing to brag about. As Wang Sampang said, what everyone was thinking, the 2 military instructors began to laugh simultaneously. It was evident that they thought Wang Sampang's words were far too childish. As the bus entered the mountain, they had been on the road for more than half a day. Mo Fan wasn't leisurely sitting around for more than half a day. He was maintaining his meditation at the very back of the bus. He and the bus were fated. When he had completed connecting 7 stars and lightning strike, he was also on the bus. This time, Mo Fan felt like his fire element had touched upon something. The little loach pendant was like a stardust magic tool. It allowed Mo Fan's cultivation time to hugely upgrade. It has been a year since the annual examination, and Mo Fan realized that not only had his stardust become tremendously bright, but the stars within the fire element stardust had gone through a huge change. In the past, the star's radiance would be occasionally bright and occasionally dark. Currently, the star's radiance could be said to be extremely steady. It was said that when the star's brilliance began to transform, its ability to conduct magic would also improve. A spell's effect and might would also follow this change and strengthen. He spent the entire second year of high school increasing this. I wonder what kind of might the next level of fire burst will possess. I can't wait. At last, they finally arrived at the Snowy Peak Mountain Station. Although they said it was a small stronghold, this place wasn't just some crude village. The stronghold station used the incomparably precipitous cliff as its sides. The cliffs were at least 100 meters high, You could only see the sky if you were to fully tilt your head backwards. The cliffs on the two sides formed a natural wall. Additionally, the front and the back of the valley road had two colossal stone doors locked down. The entire stronghold station was just like a small fort garrison within the valley. So this is the Snowy Peak Mountain Stronghold. It is said that other than the high-level flying-type magical beasts, as well as those that have a climbing ability, this Snowy Peak Mountain Fort garrison can obstruct the absolute majority of the evil creatures that are doing bad deeds from the safety zone. Moreover, due to the Snowy Peak Mountain Station, we haven't had any frightening reports about people being hurt within the safety zone for many years. Zhang Jingguo walked out of the bus as he looked at the large protective stone doors. He couldn't help but feel deeply moved. Teacher, I heard that this protective stone door is made by our Bo City's construction master, Earth Element Magician Zhang Yuan. No magic beneath the intermediate level is capable of moving it. The young lady Ba Zhoumin asked while being the good student she was. That's right. The stone door seems a bit old, but the truth is that its firmness is no way inferior to steel. Zhang Jingguo walked in the front, holding in his hands a flag for the third group. He looked like a tour guide who was taking the students on a walk around an ancient city. Not long after, the other four groups' buses arrived in succession. The 100 elite students of Tian Lan Magic High stood together beneath the tall and sturdy stone door. On the two sides of the stone gate were two sentries. Amongst them was a battle mage who didn't wear his uniform. He was leisurely playing with a flame in his hands. The small flame was like an obedient pet, moving actively within his hands. Occasionally, it would float around his body. It seemed wonderfully graceful. As Mo Fan noticed this, he was amazed. From the way he was playing with the fire, Mo Fan could tell that the man was far more skilled than he was. He began wondering how much stronger the plain-clothed battle mage's fire burst skill would be compared to his own. Hey, Boss Zhang Kong, how come you're assigned to this post today? Luo Yunbo raised his head as he smiled toward the fire mage who was fiddling with flames. I have nothing to do. I heard there would be some high school girls coming here today, so I specifically came here to check it out myself. The man called Zhang Kong didn't hide his characteristics as he smiled to himself. On the side, Zhoumin pursed her small brows. It was because she could already feel this magician called Zhang Kong was already gazing at her as he checked her out. So handsome. Yeah, you simply can't compare the little brats from our school with him. He has such a manly aura to him, and he's also very honest. The few infatuated girls in the class could no longer maintain their calm and immediately began to chatter continuously. Little girl, don't crease your brow toward our boss Zhangkong. He is one of the rare experts here. A voice that sounded as though she didn't like guiding the students came from the vice captain, Pan Li Jun, and in her voice was a slight note of adoration for Zhangkong. I've heard of the name Zhangkong. Isn't that the fire magician who slaughtered the most amount of magical beasts in the Snowy Peak Mountain Station? Zhang Jingguo immediately raised his head as he loudly said, It's an honor to meet you. He has only killed off a few magical beasts. What's so impressive about that? Wang Sampang said. It is indeed not impressive. When Deng Kai proposed the idea of having you students come here for practicals, I did reject it, the handsome mustachioed Zhang Kong said. The warning from a year ago has passed. Currently, there won't be any problem. As a mage, you still need this practical no matter what. You can't just extend it just because of a warning from a year ago, Zhang Jingguo said. I don't really mind as long as you don't let the students wander around. I don't want to see this fine and delicate beautiful girl being eaten by a one-eyed magic wolf, Zhang Kong said with a hearty laugh. Zhang Jingguo smiled awkwardly. The other person was a genuine expert. Even if he were to assail a woman with obscenities, he, a teacher, was unable to do anything. The warning from a year ago? Mo Fan had heard of this matter from Little Ant. However, as Mo Fan had spent most of his time within the ivory tower of the school, the dangerous matters that occurred in the outside world were unknown to him. The entry and exit was clearly within the hands of the man called Zhang Kong. As the 100 elite students exited the bus, they all began entering the Snowy Peak Mountain stronghold. The stronghold was very simple, with only a single main road. On the main road were many shops and vendors. It was virtually no different than the marketplace for a town. The only difference was that they didn't sell chicken, duck, or fish meat. They sold the necessities required for a mage's battles and cultivation. Come, top-rate magic boot equipment. Let me tell you, this is some good stuff. Do you know what the fastest magical beast is? That's right, it is made of the skin of a speed beast's hind legs, with the wind trail magic pattern. It also has a pure wind stone, increasing its energy. If you were to run using this, you'll definitely cause the one-eyed magic wolf to stare helplessly. If you were to buy this, I will give it to you with a discount, seeing how you and this treasure have interlinked fate. Second Baldy, stop bullshitting. How can this thing be called magic equipment? Any random Nike would be better than your pair. Bullshit. We lost 2 people killing a speed beast, and I was awarded the skin of the hind legs. It's definitely a genuine pair of magic boots equipment. The second Baldy immediately began a dispute with the person who made fun of him. Further up was a vendor, and they had magic stones of all colors. Magic stones were very simple. They were produced when the elements fire, wind, lightning, or earth were dense, producing an extraordinary stone. Inhabiting these stones was energy similar to the magic powers within a magician's stardust. Although they couldn't be directly used by magicians, they could still be used by embedding them into magic tools and magic equipment to supply them with constant energy. This knowledge has already been discussed by the teacher during class, and Mo Fan had earnestly listened to it at the time. They had said that on many occasions, the purified magic stones could also be used as a currency. The consumption rate of the magic stones was colossal. In fact, it was the equivalent of a power source in the scientific world. Mo Fan originally thought the mobile, computers, and household appliances used freaking electricity. After that lesson, he understood that the power plants here weren't some water conservancy that supplied electricity, nor some windmill network, but instead used lightning magic stones. There's nothing he could do about it. The light element originating from Edison was something Mo Fan had to accept. Apart from this, the one who invented the steam machines and helped the entire world enter an industrial revolution. That's right, he was a fire magician. The theory behind the steam machine was a fire magic diagram. They used the fire magic stone as the power source. That is why this world didn't have oil, hydroelectric power, or electrical energy. They relied on these magic stones to survive. And where did the magic stones come from? Naturally, they came from nature. The cruel thing is the magical beasts also needed the magic stones. The magic stones were their most important food and were a vital source of energy to becoming stronger. Thus, when the humans were searching for, digging up, and gathering magic stones, their biggest obstacle wasn't the nature, but the magical beasts who also relied on magic stones to survive. Magical beasts were instinctively hostile toward humans. Think about it. All of the magical equipment within the city was simply food to magical beasts. Additionally, humans had always been their prey, which is why human magicians and the magical beasts had never ceased their battles against each other. Perhaps this was the biggest difference between the original world and the current magical world. In the original world, the humans held a governing position. If they wanted to sweep things away, all they needed to do was send a guided missile. However, in the world of magic, explosive weapons didn't exist. There were only magicians. Perhaps heavy explosive weapons would be unable to achieve their goal, and the magical beasts would occupy even more territory. The majority of humans could only live in cities. A city needed the protection of magicians. This was also the reason why a magician's status would always be higher than commoners. Not only do they possess a mighty power, but they also had a divine mission. Brother Fan, on the practicals this time, we must properly show ourselves off. I've heard the practicals grades are directly related to our admission to university. It occupies 20% of the total admission grade, Zhang Xiaoho said to Mo Fan. Mo Fan nodded. Their homeroom teacher, Xuan Musheng, had already mentioned this matter. The practicals were basically a part of the high school exams. This is because the grades were set by the military, which is to say the military head of this practical exercise. The evaluation of the head military instructor would be either C or A. This would directly decide whether the student magicians would end up in a top-rate magic university or just a common magic university. The imperial institution which Mu Ningxue was in at the moment would require the students to reach an A before they would bother to recruit them. Mo Fan had not resigned himself to staying in a small place like Bo City. Besides, the higher-tiered magic could only be learned in larger cities and universities. On the practicals this time, he also wanted to attain a grade of A or higher. Only this way would he have the right to enter universities of the same level as an imperial institution. These military instructors have been bribed by the school. Even if you were to waste your time here for 2 months, they'd at least give you B or C. That's why there's no need to worry. Wang Sanpeng came over by chance, as he said with a smile. That's right, it was like the previous sessions as well. Another student who knew of the internal stories also nodded his head. That's about right. The school definitely hopes for the military instructors to give them a higher grade. Gather in the plaza. Gathering. After Luo Yunbo loudly shouted, all the students began to quickly gather within the central plaza of the Snowy Peak Mountain Stronghold. The number of people could be said to be of no small amount. There were 100 of them in all. They all wore the uniform of Tian Lan Magic High. After all of the students had properly lined up, they quickly attracted the attention of the magicians stationed around the stronghold. They slowly gathered to surround the students. Each one of them seemed to be engrossed, their faces showing an exceptional sneer. Come and check this out, it's a new group of interns, haha. We can once again see the newbies make a fool out of themselves, a man with a sharp face like a rat said. Exactly. The period of time where the interns are here are the most lively period of time in this stronghold. Guess which one of these interns will be scared to the point where they pee their pants? A man who looked like the officer of a small hunter squad said as he stuck his head out. I guess there'll be at least 30. Then the rest of the 70 will be scared until they faint. The students formed a formation on the plaza, but they could easily hear the voices of the veterans of the stronghold. Most of them had a look that made them seem as if they took pleasure in seeing other people's misfortune. They definitely did not try to cover up their disdain toward the students. The 100 elite students were divided into 5 groups, and there were 20 people in each of the 5 groups. In the front stood 2 military instructors and 1 practical class teacher. Head military instructor. The head military instructor has come. Not long after, a group of battle mages wearing uniforms neatly walked to the front of the gathered students, and one could feel a certain prestige emitted from their aura. Leading these people was unexpectedly the mustache uncle who was playing with the flames by the sentry, Jean Combe. Jean Combe still had that superior appearance. As the head military instructor, his unorganized appearance actually caused people to think otherwise. Hello everyone, I am the chief military instructor of your practicals, Jean Combe. You should consider yourselves lucky because you are the first group of examinees that have come here since I've taken charge, the chief military instructor, Jean Combe said. The students were standing there with their backs straight. None of them dared to say a word. In the past, they'd only interacted with teachers. The knowledge the teachers could impart to everyone was abundant, but it was only theories and data. The battle mages had remnant auras from killing magical beasts. These students who had never seen this aspect of the world were not rash, despite the chief military instructor, called Jean Combe, seeming gentle. Don't worry. You are the first practical students that I will be responsible for. In order for you to smoothly pass the practicals that directly influences your high school examinations, I will give you all a special treatment, Jean Combe said with a loud voice. Not being able to pass the practical examination or getting a low score will influence the grades by a lot. It's possible that their fate would greatly change due to the assessment of the practicals this time. I understand that you are all the most outstanding young magicians of our Bo City, and I also believe you possess the required strength to pass the practical examination this time. Thus, the practicals this time will be extremely easy, Jean Combe said harmlessly. At this moment, Luo Yunbo and Pan Lijun couldn't help but crease their foreheads. Whenever he revealed this kind of smile, it wouldn't be a good thing. I just received a bounty, and the difficulty is of the lowest level. There's 100 magicians in total from the school, right? How about this? If any of the squad or individual amongst you 100 people are able to complete this bounty, then you will pass the entire practical assessment and acquire grade A, Jean Combe said. Before Jean Kong could finish his sentence, an uproar occurred within the small stronghold. The ones most excited were naturally the 100 practical students. They had heard their senior brothers and sisters mention the matters regarding practicals. All they needed to do is to waste time at the station and not provoke the instructors, and they'll basically pass. If you performed well, you could get a B, and it wouldn't be much of a problem. However, they'd never heard of something like clearing a bounty. Bounties, aren't these the special missions undertaken by the full-grown mage squads that are looking for the high reward? Within the plaza, even the hunters who had been at the station for a long time couldn't calm themselves. What kind of situation was this? Letting these students undertake the bounty missions? That was retarded. Even our full-fledged mage hunting squads are unable to succeed, and now these immature and inexperienced students are supposed to finish it? What if none of us are able to finish this mission? Su Zhaoding, who was standing further to the front, asked. Then no one will pass. Jean Kong replied indifferently. All the students and teachers were unable to remain calm after hearing these words. Chief Military Instructor, you might as well fail us all. At this moment, Class Representative Zhou Min stood up as she was at the end of her patience. Yeah, there's no difference between that and failing us right now. Zhang Jingguo, Xue Musheng, Tang Yue, and Chen Weiliang. The teachers' expressions were also exceedingly concerned. What was with this situation? Didn't they already bribe them? So why is this Jean Kong not playing according to the rules? A bounty. Was this really something the students were able to do? How is it inappropriate? Why don't you go and find your school director, Deng Kai? Either way, it won't be easy for you to receive high grades from me. Since Tianlan Magic High is the best public high school in Bo City, then you shouldn't have brought a group of wastes here for practicals. Besides, if all you're planning on doing is wasting your time here, then you might as well go back to school and read magic books. What's the freaking use of bribery? It'd be good if that didn't happen. That way, you wouldn't come to a station where danger lurks everywhere. Jean Kong's tone suddenly turned serious. Just now, he had a gentle appearance, but in a flash, he turned into a fiend. Underscore brought a group of wastes for practicals? Underscore. Those words struck the hearts of the students fiercely. Chief Military Instructor, the examination you used is a bit too much. From what I know, any random bounty would require a squadron that has been polishing their skills in the outside world for at least 3 to 5 years to successfully complete, Teacher Zhang Jingguo said with lack of confidence. You have 100 people. If you can't even finish a bounty mission, then the wastes you mediocre teachers have raised would leave me very disappointed. Are they even elite students? Chief Military Instructor Jean Kong replied with no trace of politeness. As Zhang Jingguo heard this, his face turned green and white. This instructor had something wrong with his head. Let's not even mention him issuing an impossible mission. He even slandered all of the teachers and students of Tianlan Magic High. Naturally, for the squadron or person that successfully completes the bounty, I will personally gift a reward. This reward is a piece of defensive magic equipment, continued Jean Kong as he raised his voice. As soon the words defensive magic equipment were mentioned, the veteran hunters outside of the plaza suddenly got excited. Shit, awarding some defensive magic equipment? Boss Jean Kong, don't do it. Why don't you give that opportunity to us? We promise we will be able to smoothly accomplish the mission. Yeah, we are just in need of a piece of defensive magic equipment. That life-saving thing should definitely be given to us. Allow us to have a fair competition with these students, Boss Jean Kong. We also want the magic equipment. In a flash, the small hunter squadrons outside of the plaza were suddenly shouting out all this. Magic equipment. Magical equipment was something that connected with your soul. With your thoughts, you were able to activate it, and it would quickly transform into its genuine form. It would then become gear that would assist you in battles. They were just like the boot magic equipment the second Baldy tried to sell. Only after you wore and activated it would the speed of your body substantially increase. If you really were to meet a foe that you couldn't fight against, then the boot magic equipment would be a life-saving item. Additionally, if their body were to have increased speed during combat, then it could substantially increase the magician's combat power. Defensive magic equipment. It was a special type of equipment that was able to directly morph into a shield or armor. At a crucial time, It could block the attack of a magical beast, and thus was also a form of lifeguarding equipment. Although the magic equipment's price wasn't as high as a Stardust magic tool, to people like hunters who risked their life every day in the outside world, it was treated like divine equipment. What was more valuable than life? Shit, that's some good stuff. From what I know, a common defensive magic tool would end up being priced at several thousand yuan. No wonder these hunters are going crazy. This kind of money-bustling thing unexpectedly become the reward of the practical for these immature and inexperienced students. The question is, can those students obtain it? You're right. The bounties are usually really difficult, and even the veteran magicians can occasionally be caught in life-threatening situations. Mo Fan was still a stranger towards magic equipment, but if he were to convert the magic equipments into currency, then he would understand perfectly. Even the most common magic equipment was worth a good 1,000 yuan. Underscore shit. This daddy has never seen that much money in his life before. Underscore.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.